Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto awakens his potential arley help of Kurama. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by RassenReaper and link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Naruto awoke to a black void he seemed to be little too familiar with. He wondered if this was really it, if he was really dead this time. He remembered how he was with Sasuke, fighting Kage Utsutsuki, how she had beaten them so easily. All she had to do was suck out all of their chakra until their bodies eventually gave out. He remembered back to the story Black Zetsu had told him, how he orchestrated and manipulated the shinobi world to bring about the resurrection of his mother. He thought back to how he had failed everyone. Coming out of his thoughts for a moment he realized that where he wasn't very afterlife-ish. Groggily he sat up to look around, only to find more of the void he was sitting in. Quite interesting. He heard a dark and cold voice that instantly sent a shiver up his spine. He turned around to find the source of the voice, shocked to see a white mane of hair, red horns, and a pale purple face that was very the image of death. "I believe this to be the second time I'd be seeing you," the Reaper said neutrally. Naruto nodded slowly, squinting his eyes a little, trying to remember the first time. As if knowing what he was thinking, the Reaper answered the unasked question. "The first was when your parents died, sealing that Biju inside of you." Naruto nodded again, this time in understanding. "So I'm really dead this time, huh? Kinda sucks considering that means the end of the shinobi world as we know it." The Reaper stared at him what almost seemed like amusement. Naruto couldn't really tell with the indefinite cold look the Shinigami had. "Speaking of Biju, what happened to Kurama? Does he die with me? Usually I would have, but something is still tying me down here," said a low and menacing voice that Naruto knew all too well. "Kurama, you're here too. Apparently so, Ninjin." Naruto looked around for his befriended tenet only to see her materialize behind him in her classic lie-down form with her head on her massive paws. Naruto turned back around to ask the Shinigami another question only to be beaten to it by the death god, suddenly answering him again. He was starting to dislike that. "I have a proposition for you, human. As I said before, you are a rather interesting individual. I have watched you for quite a while now, taking an interest shortly after your Biju was sealed into you." "The proposition? I thought the Shinigami was supposed to take lives no questions asked, send them to the afterlife, that type of thing, not make some deal with a random dead person." Naruto said this with confusion in his voice, not expecting the god of death to make a deal with him of all people. "I believe I said proposition, not deal. You have nothing that interests me to offer, so only you would be on the receiving end." Naruto just looked upon the Shinigami with a bit more confusion evident on his face. "You have gone about your life rather uniquely to say the least, even more so evident that there has been no fear in you since our confrontation started. Greater men have cowered before me." He said this in his neutrally cold tone that he always spoke with, something Naruto had quickly adapted to. Naruto couldn't help but be impatient. "Okay, so you have a proposition or whatever for me, what is it?" "I'm getting to it," it said a bit more coldly if it was even possible. Naruto shut up and listened to him, came the annoyed fox. Kurama had been deeply interested in this ever since the conversation started. For the death god himself to speak to a mortal was unheard of, let alone make an offer of something. "Yes, anyway. Since you have been a source of amusement to me, I'm willing to let you continue to amuse me." "So what, are you going to resurrect me so I can beat Kage or something?" "Naruto," this time it was an annoyed growl. Naruto just quickly glanced at Kurama with a huff of apology, making the fox roll her eyes, Naruto setting his attention on the Shinigami once again. "No. As you could see, you couldn't beat her, so that would be pointless. No, I have something much better in mind. I'm offering to send you back in the past to possibly fix what happened and prevent this turn of events. Without shinobi, the world would get considerably more dull, making my job that much less enjoyable." Naruto slightly quirked an eyebrow at the mention of the death god enjoying what he does. He then realized what the Reaper had just said, eyes going wide in shock. "You can do that? I am a god, the most powerful no less, so I don't see why it would be so impossible." He stated this very matter-of-factly, without a hint of arrogance, which didn't go unnoticed by his audience. Growing suspicious, the fox voiced her own question. "Why? Why choose Naruto amongst the thousands that die every day?" The Shinigami looked over at the fox for the first time and responded. "It's like I said, Naruto has been amusing, leading a life that no other human had quite done before, and new things are extraordinarily rare nowadays." The fox seemed to be content with the answer and let the exchange to be continued without further interruption. The Shinigami once again looked back at Naruto, who still couldn't quite believe, nor wrap his head around, what he had just been told. "I should say that you don't have to, as it is just an offer. I'll take you to the afterlife if you so wish it." After staring down at the ground for a few moments in contemplation, Naruto looked back up with a still slightly confused look. So you take me back, just like that, no questions asked, and no other strings attached. Correct? If I were to say yes, how would that even work? I mean, sending me back in time would be a little noticeable by like, everyone, Databeo. True enough, but I'd only be sending your mind and memory back, as well as your Bijuus. I'd also change a few things. Kurama's eyes widened ever so slightly at the mention of her name also going back with Naruto, then she focused on the tail end of what the death god had just said. Thinking along the same lines, Naruto voiced it before she could. Change things. Like what? The Shinigami looked at him for a moment with his cold stare before answering. I'd open your mind. At that, Naruto was thoroughly confused, not getting it at all. Kurama, on the other hand, had an idea where the Shinigami was going with this. Would you be changing who Naruto is, like his personality? Kurama interrupted once again. Like the first time, the death god looked at the fox with cold eyes. No, he would retain everything, only be a bit more open to certain things, such as knowledge. At that, Kurama lifted her head up out of disbelief before she quickly went back down to rest on her paws once again, staring at Naruto and suddenly wondering what a smart Naruto would be like. Naruto still wasn't quite getting it, however, soon to be rectified. Also know that I'd be sending you to your 6-year-old self a day before you enter the academy. This is mainly because any time before that would be problematic with your still developing brain as well your body not being able to handle the stress of an older you invading a younger one. Naruto didn't quite get what Figure was saying, but the time he mentioned seemed okay with him. At least he'd be able to show up that insufferable Uchiha that the girls always flocked to. Well, do you accept my offer? Naruto once again looked down in thought, not something he had been very used to over the years and had been doing it a little more than he was comfortable with. Then suddenly it dawned on him. He could save everyone. Everyone that had died up until that point, within reason, that is. Neji. Hirosenin. Asuma. Haku. As well as all the shinobi that this pointless war had claimed. Suddenly Naruto looked up with determination in his eyes, a sight that the Shinigami knew all too well. I accept your offer. The death god nodded with a pleased look, if he could have one. Kurama narrowed her eyes a bit though. As if Naruto knew, he spun around with a look of apology towards his tenant. Oh Kurama, I'm sorry, I didn't ask if you wanted to accept or not. Kurama merely sighed and looked at her favorite human. It's fine. I'd have been mad if you didn't accept it. Being eternal, dying isn't something I really want happening anytime soon. Naruto looked relieved at that. Now that you have accepted, I do have a few guidelines for you to follow. Naruto turned back to the Shinigami with a bit of confusion. I thought you said there wouldn't be any strings attached. Nor shall there be. These are merely guidelines to make your life easier and so you don't stray too far from the original timeline too soon. You can do that later. Naruto nodded, understanding somewhat. First of all, don't tell anyone that you're from the future. Only tell those that you intimately trust, but even wait to tell those people for at least a few years. You can never be too careful. Something that goes with this is to not mention me. I don't need power-hungry fools chasing after a power they can't have. That would be rather bothersome. The humans can already use him in the form of the Reaper Death Seal and that blasted mask. He didn't need any other means to have to entertain mortals. Naruto just nodded once again, waiting for the death god to finish. Next, don't show off your power unless it's absolutely necessary. You will be keeping some of it after all. Speaking of, don't try Senjutsu until your chakra pathways have matured. If you try and fail, then sending you back to the past would have been pointless. You being a stone toad isn't as amusing as you might think. The Shinigami somehow managed to keep his cold tone while making that statement. Naruto once again nodded, this time understanding fully what the Shinigami was saying. With a grimace, he remembered back to when he was training for Senjutsu and what the failed attempts had looked like while also rubbing the phantom pain on his head from being whacked one too many times by that stupid toad elder. I will also ingrain a jutsu into your mind that will allow you to summon a book that will tell you what you did that day in the past, in case you forget, which you probably will. You don't have to follow it forever, probably just until the academy is done and over with. Naruto nodded and thought to how useful that would be and how he needed to make sure no one caught him reading it. And don't worry, no one will be able to read its contents but you. Naruto was relieved at that, but once again slightly irritated to have his mind read again. And that would be all. Are you ready to go? Naruto abruptly came out of his thoughts to look up at the death god with a bit of surprise. Like, right now? Yes, now. Naruto looked down for a moment in thought, then back at Kurama, who only slightly nodded, then the blonde brought his head back up to face the Shinigami. With a new fire in his eyes he responded, alright, let's go. Moments later, the Shinigami's eyes erupted with light blinding Naruto and his tenant. And with that, everything then went dark. Naruto woke suddenly, eyes shooting open. He saw a ceiling. His ceiling. He lied there a moment to get his bearings, then sat up to look at his surroundings. He was in his apartment. He sat there, feeling rather strange. He thought about what had happened, eyes going wide as he did so. He looked down at himself only to be even more shocked. He was little. Very little. He couldn't believe the death god had actually sent him back. After thinking back on the encounter he noticed something strange, it didn't bother him to think deeply about his situation now. Looking at his hands he couldn't help but think what had happened to him, why his mind was suddenly so clear with understanding. As if suddenly remembering he looked down at his seal. "Kurama, are you there?" "Yeah, but barely. Since you were sent back to your younger self, the seal is once again in place, making it difficult to communicate." Naruto just nodded to himself, it actually making sense to him. "And before you go thinking that you can just go ripping the seal off again, don't. Your body can't handle." Yeah, I know. I'll probably wait until my chakra network has matured, much like how I am to wait for Senjutsu." After saying that, Naruto cocked his head a little in confusion. Did he always talk like that? His tenant also caught this with a bit of surprise. Naruto just widened his eyes. So that's what the Shinigami meant when he said he'd open my mind. Trailing off, Naruto just went through his thoughts a mile a minute, everything becoming so clear to him. While thinking through things, a thought suddenly came to his head. Fuchius no Jutsu. Suddenly a book popped into existence, landing on Naruto's lap. Strange that it didn't require blood to activate. All he had to do was call out the jutsu. Naruto peered at the leather-bound book curiously. He flipped through it, only to be surprised that the entire thing was blank. That was until he turned to the first page. Play pranks all day, including one against the clothing merchant, the Hokage, and the village by painting all over the Hokage monument. Naruto suddenly remembered how much of a prankster he was in his younger days, and then suddenly remembering why he had singled out that clothing merchant. He had wanted to buy some more clothes because he only had 2 outfits at the time. The shop owner saw him walk into the shop and proceeded to kick him out with more force than was necessary, and with a bit of name-calling that may or may not have included Demon Child in the mix. After thinking back on this, Naruto realized he had a perfect memory of the day now, or at least what he had done in the past, now present. It was like the leather-bound book transferred all the memories that he no longer had into his mind, so he could replay the day just like he had before. Naruto now understood the importance of this as well. He couldn't alter the timeline, at least not yet. He remembered the death god had said to wait until he was out of the academy. Changing anything too soon would only make people suspicious and make preventable things not so preventable if he didn't know what was going to happen. That brought a few thoughts to mind. He'd have to go through all of the village's scorn once again, the loneliness of having no friends, and all the name-calling and ignoring that he received on a daily basis. He didn't mind it much anymore, him conquering his hatred a while back, in his own timeline at least. But he also remembered that he wouldn't be able to stop the Uchiha massacre, stop Itachi from leaving Sasuke in a pit of bottomless hatred. Naruto disliked that he had to make Sasuke go through all of that, Naruto knowing exactly what happened with Itachi being a hero to the leaf. He suddenly realized it was going to be a little difficult to keep all of his knowledge a secret now that he had it. At least now he wouldn't be so lonely with his tenant, now friend, keeping him company. Now he could focus on making a more positive relationship with her and not just learning how to fight with her. He could already tell that he was going to have some fun with that. Suddenly bringing him out of his thoughts, he heard a rumbling sound emanating from his stomach. Well, time for some ramen. If he could see his tenant she'd be rolling her eyes at the statement. Naruto swung his legs over to stand up, suddenly feeling how light he was. He pushed that aside for now, hunger taking priority in his thoughts. After he ate his favorite meal and got ready for the day, his thoughts then drifted back to how he felt so light. Hey Kurama, why do you suppose I feel so light? Besides the fact that I'm a lot smaller, it seems like it's something different. Since the Shinigami sent your memories back, you probably retained your muscle memory on how to move. That in conjunction with your lighter body is probably the reason for your strange feeling. Naruto nodded in understanding, somewhat surprising the fox in her now jailer's mental capacity. I suppose that makes sense. It'll make training a lot easier, that's for sure. Oh, I want to try something. Naruto brought his hands up into a cross formation. Page Bunshin no Jutsu. Suddenly a puff of white smoke appeared in front of Naruto, revealing an identical version of him. He was wearing beige cargo pants that went down to the top of his ankles and a black and orange hoodie that was cut off at the sleeves with a white shirt underneath. Feeling somewhat drained, Naruto looked at his clone with a smirk. Now that I know I can do that, I'll have you go do everything that the past me would have done while I focus on more important things. Naruto, don't you think that your chakra reserves are a little low to be making shadow clones do whatever you want? As you remember, it was a kenjutsu that had the ability to kill the user. Performing it at this age would kill just about everyone who would try it, Kurama informed. Hey, that's why I have you right. The seal is loosened enough for some of your chakra to help make them, isn't it? Unfortunately, no. The seal won't really start weakening at all until around your second year at the academy. Even then it wouldn't be enough to help in any real way. Naruto frowned at that. He needed to train to get his strength back, and pulling pranks all day just wasted the time he had to do just that. Fine. I'll do the day-to-day stuff for now and work on my chakra reserves in my downtime. I'll get them expanded as soon as possible so I can have my clone here focus on the stuff I don't need to. Popping the clone out of existence, Naruto headed for the door to pull his pranks on the people of Konoha. For some reason, pranks just didn't have the same enjoyment that they used to anymore. After thoroughly angering the shop owner and annoying the Hokage, as well as the rest of the civilians of Konoha, Naruto laid back in his bed contemplating the day. While he was setting up his pranks, he noticed that his chakra control was better than it had ever been, probably because his reserves were so low. The surface clinging technique was remarkably easy and made the vandalizement of the Hokage monument much easier. He also noticed that he was much faster than he was before at his age, this being because of his chakra-enhanced muscles that he now knew how to do. Increased strength came along with this, he didn't need it much today, however. After laying there for a good 20 minutes, he got up to work on his chakra reserves. To do this, he summoned as many shadow clones as he could and had them perform the surface clinging technique to hang from the ceiling. Right now his max was 4 before feeling like he was going to pass out. This frustrated Naruto, but he relented as he understood this was going to take time. After his chakra training was done, he took a shower and then headed off to bed. Before going to sleep, though, he wanted to have a conversation with his tenant first. He sat on his bed in meditation and closed his eyes. After opening his eyes, Naruto saw that he was in his mindscape. It was remarkably less dingy than the first time he visited all those years ago. "Hey there, Ninjin. Was there something you needed?" "Not really, I just wanted to talk to you." Narrowing her eyes a bit, she stared at the boy. "About what exactly?" "Hey, now do I really need a reason to come and talk to my favorite fox?" Kurama closed her eyes with a snort. "I suppose not. Just a little strange is all." Naruto smirked at that. "I was wondering how you were adjusting being in a seal again. After being out of it, only to be put back in, it can't be too comfortable of an adjustment." The fox opened her eyes slightly to look at the smirking boy. "It's not too bad, I suppose. I know that you'll release it as soon as you can, so I'll just have to be patient, not something that's too difficult when you're immortal." The smirking boy stared back at her with a bit of mirth in his eyes. "Right you are. We can't have someone as pretty as you behind iron bars now, can we?" She narrowed her eyes dangerously at that. "What are you doing?" It was more of a demand than a question. Naruto just had a mock look of betrayal on his face. "What are you talking about? I'm just trying to have a conversation with my only friend. Is that really so bad?" Kurama just huffed at that while closing her eyes. "Listen, I'm tired, so leave me in peace for now." Naruto just nodded and let himself be pulled out of his mindscape. He opened his eyes and laid back onto his bed. "Geez, she's awful touchy when it comes to compliments of any kind. I guess I'll have to work on that." Naruto smirked again and rolled over on his side to drift off to sleep. The first day at the academy was pretty uneventful. All Naruto did was go and get through the introductions and sit through the speech about the will of fire from the Hokage. He still enjoyed that speech, it meaning more to him now than any of the other kids listening. As he went about the day, he also found it hard to react like he typically would if he really was an 8-year-old Naruto. He was going to have to get real good at acting and fast. There was one kid in his class that asked the sensei a really stupid question, and Naruto almost blew his cover on his second day back by answering him. It was something along the lines of, would the Uchiha have the will of fire if they were the police force? Sasuke looked about ready to kill the kid. The kid was quickly answered by the sensei as to cool down any anger that had been sent his way, Naruto included. Naruto didn't know how he was going to deal with all the little kiddies and their stupidity for 6 years. He also wasn't looking forward to having to fail the Genin test twice, again. But he would have to if he wanted to be on the same team he was on in his time. When he would begin making his shadow clones do everything he didn't want to, he would have to be sure to dumb it down a bit so it would act like he was at that age. The discrimination from sensei wasn't going to be fun to deal with either. But he'd get through it, though. He'd done it before, and this time he didn't have to deal with the bottled-up hatred that he had harbored before. He'd come a long way in understanding the people of Konoha and why they acted the way they did. Plus he'd always have his red friend for emotional support if she could even offer any. He had to chuckle to himself at that. Humming out of his thoughts, he refocused on his chakra training. He didn't dare do it outside his house in case of prying eyes. He also had to be careful of the Anbu that guarded his front door 24/7. He tried to make as little noise as possible whenever he was training and was successful the majority of the time. He was a little frustrated, however, that the Anbu would let the civilians do whatever they wanted to his home, now knowing the Anbu would be there. Naruto just guessed it was to be sure that he wasn't killed. Everything else would be permitted. More of that village scorn he'd have to put up with. He was thankful that Kakashi and Itachi always tried to look out for him when they could, trying to make their presence unknown. They succeeded before, but now Naruto could notice them with some effort. The day was surprising, that being because Naruto could now produce 6 shadow clones. Not a lot of progress, but it had only been a day. He'd take improvement where he could get it. How long are you going to make me do this, Kurama? Naruto said to himself, a bit exhausted. If I can make 6, then why can't I have one go to the academy every day? That is because I'm cautious, Naruto. What if a situation came up where you needed that 6th one because of a small change you made? It's the butterfly effect. There's no telling what may change. So wait until I can get my chakra flowing through your coils so I can expand them. However, going at the rate you are, I'd say you'd be safe doing so in about 6 to 8 months. So be patient and keep doing what you're doing for a while. Great. He would have to deal with stupid kids and pointless pranks for that much longer. Needless to say, he wasn't happy about it, but he would listen to his tenant's advice. She had been around for a lot longer than he has, so he wouldn't take her advice for granted. After he was thoroughly exhausted from chakra depletion, he laid in his bed for about an hour. After resting a bit, he left to go get his favorite ramen from Ichiraku. With his allowance being as small as it was from the orphanage's care system that ran through the civilian council, he could only get his delicious treat about twice a week. The only reason he got as much as he did was because Hiruzen made sure that he would have enough to live off of. The civilians, knowing this, charged him way more than everyone else, somewhat compensating for the funding he was getting. He was grateful that he had begged the Hokage to give him an apartment when he was 5 to get out of the hellhole of an orphanage, though. The complex he was in now was a bit run down, as to be expected, but it was a vast improvement over where he would be. It also helped that he didn't have to deal with neighbors, them seeing fit to all move away once they found out the demon child had moved in. At least he wouldn't have to deal with noise complaints. After enjoying his meal at Ichiraku's and spending some time with his surrogate sister Am, he headed home to get ready for the next day at the academy, not that he wasn't prepared. It helps when you have a little book that tells you everything that you need to do. Over the course of a few weeks after the academy started, Naruto began looking for a training ground to train in after his classes, and then also during when he managed the shadow clones. It became apparent he needed one when one morning of doing exercises, namely running laps around the village walls, he was stopped by an Anbu and sent to the Hokage. It was annoying to have to deal with, but he understood it nonetheless. So now he was looking for a training ground. It had to be secluded enough so that no one would bother him, but not so secluded that it would be guarded or patrolled by Anbu. He thought of the Forest of Death, but he didn't think he'd be ready for that for at least a few years. So he stuck with finding another one until then. After searching for one for about 3 weeks, he found one that met his stipulations. He wouldn't have to be wasting time like this if his apartment hadn't been so damn small. He staked out the training ground that apparently been numbered 27, if the sign was any indication, for 2 days to see if anybody would show up to it. While he was waiting for anyone to make an appearance, he practiced his surface clinging technique to hopefully up his reserves a bit. If he was going to take time to sit around and wait for something that may not happen, he might as well make use of that time. After being satisfied that no one was going to show up and discover him, he began to train there every day after classes, sneaking off with stealth skills way too advanced for an academy student. After training one day, he decided to go to the library. Learning things had actually been interesting to him for a change. With this new perception, he went to the library to learn everything he could that wasn't restricted to him. At first, the head librarian had tried to kick him out, but it was nothing a little persuasion from the Hokage couldn't handle. The Sandaime had been surprised that Naruto wanted access to the library. He hadn't thought the boy would be interested in such things like reading if his previous experience with the boy was anything to go on. He relented and had a talk with the librarians to make sure that Naruto would be allowed access. Hiruzen couldn't stop the glares they gave him, so he could only hope that in the future, that Naruto wouldn't hold it against them for their irrational fear and disdain of him. That went for pretty much the entire village as well. After a few days at the library, Naruto learned quite a lot concerning how he should go about his training from then on. The one thing he disliked the most was that he had to change his eating habits. No more ramen in a cup for every meal if he wanted to get strong as fast as he wanted to. He had to have a properly balanced diet with high calorie intake. He learned this through a few nutrition books he had found the second day he went. He didn't know how he was going to manage it though with his low allowance from the orphanage, so he read up on some scrolls and books about basic survival, such as hunting and fishing. He knew how to do it for the most part already, but knowing more about a subject and filling in any missing gaps always helped. Luckily there was a river next to training ground 27 that he could use to get fish. He'd have to bring the rest of his lunch with him, though. This was on the days he skipped his classes however, as they typically provided lunch at the academy, even if his portion was a little less than everyone else's. One day he had come across a Fuinjutsu scroll and it had greatly intrigued him. He knew his father had been excellent with seals as was his mother, being an Uzumaki and all. He wondered why he never thought to learn about it before. Of all the subjects he had learned about so far, Fuinjutsu had been by far the most interesting. After that Naruto proceeded to read and learn from every possible scroll and book about Fuinjutsu that he could. Surprisingly, most of the scrolls about the area of study had been in the unrestricted section. This was probably because with such a low number of people that had any knowledge on seals, the Hokage or other village officials thought it better to be available to anyone with an interest. After all, being a seal master didn't necessarily require you to be a ninja. After about a month after the academy started, Naruto had gotten into a rhythm for how his weeks would go. He'd wake up early to do some morning exercises, then head to the academy. He only went on Mondays and the days he had tests. After attending the academy, he'd go to his training ground to train his chakra reserves, as well as a few low-class jutsu that he could handle. When he didn't go to the academy, he would go to the library to study more about Fuinjutsu. After about a month of studying the art, he began making his own seals. It had just come so naturally to him since his mind had been opened. At first he'd just do some basic storage seals, but then he moved on to some of the more advanced ones. He still couldn't come up with his own personal seals based on his own ideas yet, he'd still be a few years away until he reached that point. But he did learn about resistant seals and the possible ways they could help him train. He was confused why more shinobi didn't use them, or at least ask seal masters such as Jiraiya to give them out to a few. Speaking of, Naruto had been thinking about the old perv since Naruto had started to train himself in seals. Naruto couldn't wait until the Chunin exams when he would get to see the Toad Sage. After about 4 months at the academy, Naruto had applied a 10-stage resistant seal on himself. He had to get a clone to do it because it had to be painted on the entirety of his back. When he would activate it, it showed thick black lines that branched from the main one located on his spinal column, down the length of all of his limbs. It showed a circle of writing where the seal was based on his lower back, about 6 inches in diameter. He figured he'd start to really work on his physical training now, then wait until later to do it. At the moment he could only go up to 2, but then it was nearly impossible for him to move, so he stuck to 1 until he had gotten used to it. He'd only deactivate it when he slept. Luckily it stayed invisible when it was activated. He didn't need other people thinking he'd gotten strange tattoos and have an even worse opinion about him than people already do. After about 5 months since he started the academy, Naruto was able to produce 50 shadow clones, a stark improvement from when he first started. Kurama then gave the blonde permission. So after that he had the clone go to the academy every day, much to the sensei's chagrin. As he had planned, he dumbed the clone down a bit after transferring the memories from the memory journal to it, so it knew what to do. Now he was able to completely focus on his training. He had to get more powerful than he ever was before if he wanted to take down the Akatsuki quicker this time. He also realized that he'd have to get as fast as his father if he wanted to land a hit on Obito. That meant learning his signature jutsu, the Hiraishin. But that would have to wait until later. Right now he had more important things to focus on. The rest of the academy year went by like this, only at one point Naruto had began sending a clone to the academy as well as the library, with a hinge of course as to not alert suspicion, while he focused on training in his training ground. That summer had gone much the same way. Due to the academy being a ninja training facility, the students only got a month off each break compared to the civilian 3. But it didn't matter much to Naruto at this point. In the past he had complained about it, but with his current situation he didn't mind. It was a clone that went after all. After about midway through his first academy year, Naruto began to instruct his clones to subtly start interacting with everyone in a slightly different way, namely, trying to solidify friendships better than he had done before, especially focusing on Hinata and Sasuke. He didn't have much luck with Sasuke. Towards the end of his first year, Naruto noticed that his chakra had increased more than it should have. Excitedly he sat down to meditate in his training ground one day to be pulled into his mindscape. "Hey Ninjin," Kurama said when she saw the boy. "Hey Kurama, it's been a while. How have you held up in this dingy place?" Naruto couldn't help but smile, though, him not being able to help thinking about real reason he was here. "It's not so bad, definitely better than when you were actually this age," the fox said with a slightly pleased tone. Napping in water was a nuisance to be sure, murky water at that. "Speaking of which, I was wondering if there was a way that I could improve your living conditions a bit," Naruto said, remembering that he wanted to do this the last time he was here. Kurama just raised her eyebrows at this, surprised that Naruto would do that for her. She then hurriedly tried to mask her surprise. "Well, it's your mindscape ninja, so I'd imagine you had control over how it looked." This surprised Naruto a little, not having thought of something so simple. Okay, what would you prefer? Kurama looked down and thought for a moment and responded. A green meadow would be nice. Alright, I'll try to see if I can do that. Naruto closed his eyes to picture said meadow. He raised his hands as if adding to the shaping of the inner world of his head. After about what seemed like 5 minutes, he opened his eyes to see lush green, a blue sky, and a bright sun that made it look like it was around 3 in the afternoon. He was happy with his handiwork and then turned to the fox. Well, how'd I do? Naruto said with a beaming smile. It'll do. The fox couldn't help but smirk. In actuality though, Kurama had been very impressed that Naruto had been able to do it and even more so that he cared enough to do it in the first place. The iron bars were still there however, spanning as far as she could see, which was to be expected, as well as the spiral seal in the middle, or at least what looked like the middle. The fox really appreciated what the boy had done, but she was much too proud to ever admit that to Naruto. I'm glad you like it. If you want anything else in here just let me know, Naruto said still beaming. He was glad that he could make his tenant happy, or at least what passed for happy for an entity supposedly composed of hatred and malice. Noted. Was there something else you wanted? Oh yeah. Naruto exclaimed remembering why he'd come in the first place. I noticed that my chakra reserves are a bit bigger than what they should be. Is the seal finally loosening? I was wondering if you'd notice. I've been working on pushing as much chakra as I could through the seal and into your system to weaken the seal sooner, and I will continue to do so. At this rate, it will be as weakened as it was when you were 15 by the time you're 12. It is also at that time that you can undo the seal, as well as use Senjutsu, Kurama informed. Naruto looked happy with that. He hadn't known Kurama had been working so hard all this time. It was a good change compared to how she used to be, full of resentment and hatred. Cool. I'd have graduated the academy by then, and that's around the time I come back from Jiraiya's training trip. By then I'll have the strength I lost back, and then some. On top of that, we can finally work together again. Naruto said with a smile. Strange one indeed, Kurama thought. Reluctantly she admitted to herself that it would be nice to work with him again, but he'd never know that. If that's all you can leave now. I want to feel what it's like to nap in the sun again, Kurama said closing her eyes. She then stretched out her massive paws, arching her back. Despite her size, Naruto couldn't help but think how adorable it was. Naruto nodded at the fox's wishes with a small smile and let himself be pulled out of his mind. The next few years had continued like this, with him training every single day for hours, both body and mind. When it came to the academy graduation exam, he actually showed up in person as to make sure his clones didn't fuck something up and blow what he had been planning. Of course he was tested on the clone jutsu. His sensei would sabotage him every opportunity they could, namely Mizuki. But Naruto didn't mind. At least it made it easy to fail. He had planned on making a deformed clone on purpose, but he realized that he wouldn't have control over it if he could make one or not. He had stood there in front of the examiner, did the proper hand sign, and produced a sickly-looking clone that looked utterly pathetic. Needless to say, Naruto failed. He went through the next year with the same results. Throughout the 2 years he failed, Naruto continued his rigorous training, not letting up for a single day. At this point, he was at the 3rd level of his resistance seal and also had come a long way in his Fuinjutsu studies. He could now use seals to hide his training from prying eyes, just in case someone happened to pass by the unused and forgotten training ground. It was a good thing too, because on the 6th day he had the seals up, a purple-haired Kunoichi had passed by the grounds, surprising Naruto. She couldn't see him thanks to the seals, but it looked like she knew something was amiss. Her hair had been tied up into a spiky ponytail that suited her quite well. She had rather revealing clothing too. She wore a fishnet bodysuit that stopped mid-thigh that left very little to the imagination, with a pale orange skirt that stopped at her lower hip, with a tan trench coat over it all that was left open, and grey shin guards over black shinobi sandals. Completing her outfit was her leaf headband on her forehead, slightly covered by her purple bangs. Naruto of course, recognized her to be Anko Mitarashi. She was a sadistic woman if his Chunin exams could say anything about it. However, now he saw her in a new light. She had the curves that complemented her outfit, the outfit trying its best to accentuate them, and Naruto sure as hell took notice of it. He had never realized just how beautiful Anko really was. After having a strange feeling in his chest and a bit of drooling, she left, obviously too busy to stay to find out what was up. Before the woman left, she shook her head to clear her thoughts after she had taken out a piece of paper to write something down. Naruto hoped it wouldn't be a problem in the future, but knowing how skilled Anko was as one of the elite Jonin, she'd probably be back after she completed her mission or whatever it was she had to do. She didn't seem like the kind of person to rat him out for training secretly, so he wasn't all that worried. Naruto was glad for the seals he had made this time, but next time she came, if there was a next time, he'd deactivate them to save her the trouble of having to figure them out. If she really wanted to, she'd get past them eventually, either by her own machinations or by calling in a Sela master. He'd just explain things to her and hope that she would understand. He also realized that he'd have to control himself in the future in the presence of other pretty girls. He didn't want to be like his now soon-to-be sensei Iro Sennin. He'd learned to control himself while silently and unnoticeably admiring from a distance. He didn't have time to be chasing women, he had more important things to do. While at the academy for his second year, Naruto had started to try to make a further effort to be friends with Sasuke. He needed to try to break him out of his arrogance and soon-to-be hatred for his brother Itachi. He didn't want him to leave the village this time around. It had caused too many headaches, one of them being Sakura. Speaking of which, he noticed that he really didn't like the girl. He didn't understand what he saw in her back when he was a kid. She was a fangirl with no talent for being a ninja except for chakra control and didn't take being a ninja seriously. Later on he would have to have a conversation with her once she was on his team about the way she wasn't going about training, which was close to none at all. He cared for her and didn't want her to fall behind like she had before, and with a different timeline, he didn't want anything bad happening to her because of a lack of training. That was one thing he had his clones change as far as how they acted as well. He really couldn't stand the idea of himself or another form of himself swooning over a girl like that. She'd be okay to be friends with once she broke out of that phase, though. But until she was on his team, he would pass on interacting with her. Just like before, it was pretty easy to make friends out of Shikamaru and Choji. After school he would have his clone hang out with them either playing ninja or looking up at the clouds, Shikamaru's favorite hobby. They would occasionally go get barbecue, Choji's favorite hobby. It was too bad clones couldn't transfer what they ate to you. That was damn good barbecue going to waste. But the experiences he had with his new friends had been worth it. One day after the academy had released its students, Naruto approached Sasuke who was on his way home. He had come personally so he could leave a good impression on the raven-haired boy. "Hey Sasuke, wait up." Naruto yelled behind him, even though he could easily catch up to him if he wanted to. "What do you want, dope? Can't you see I'm busy?" Sasuke replied coldly. After hearing about Naruto and watching how he'd score the lowest in everything, Sasuke didn't much like the blonde. He had no time for weaklings. This was further proved by Naruto's performance in the academy since he had been in class. All he had done was skip classes, be annoying, and prank Iruka and Mizuki-sensei. It wasted his time and he didn't appreciate it. He wanted to get strong like his brother Itachi. He wanted to get home too to ask his brother to teach him the shuriken jutsu. He had said he would, but he seemed to never have the time to do it, always poking him in the forehead saying, "Sorry Sasuke, maybe next time." Itachi would teach him eventually. "I was wondering if you wanted to train with me. I know a cool shuriken jutsu that I could show you," Naruto said, knowing that Sasuke wanted to learn it. Naruto learned it shortly before he came to talk to Sasuke. He had seen Sasuke do it plenty of times to figure it out himself. The blonde hoped that he would impress Sasuke enough for him to start to like him and possibly respect him. Naruto had a long way to go though in the span of 3 months. It would be then that the massacre would happen. "Me? Train with you? You're the most pathetic one in the academy. How could you ever measure up to the kind of training that I go through?" In actuality, it really wasn't a whole lot compared to what Naruto had been doing. "Have you ever considered that I don't do well because I don't want to show what I can do? A ninja always hides his secrets as well as his full ability. If you want I could prove it to you," Naruto said, trying to convince the Uchiha. "There's no way I'd believe you. And just because you can through a few kunai or shuriken doesn't mean that it's a jutsu. I'm leaving, I don't have time to waste on you," Sasuke said just as coldly as before. Once Sasuke turned around and started walking, he was surprised to see his way blocked by none other than the blonde he had just spoken to. He had moved faster than he could see, and silently at that. Sasuke narrowed his eyes in suspicion. There's no way a dope like Naruto could move that fast. Was there? He had to find out. If he really could teach him something then he could impress Itachi, and that's all that mattered. "Okay fine, show me this jutsu of yours, but you better not waste my time or you'll regret it," Sasuke said in his most menacing tone, which was hardly anything compared to what Naruto had dealt with before, mostly from a certain fox he knew. "I promise I won't. I know a training ground we could go to not all that far from here. We could go there and train." Naruto wasn't talking about training ground 27, he had to keep that one to himself. He was talking about one of the unused genin training grounds, which will be filled out next year by Team 9, Mido Guy's team. But it would be safe enough to use for now. It's not like Naruto would be using his actual skills. Sasuke nodded and followed the blonde to the training ground. On the way Naruto tried to make small talk, not getting very many responses besides the occasional grunt. Naruto at least hoped that he could break Sasuke out of his shell by the time the massacre happened. Sasuke was like a brother and Naruto wouldn't lose him to hatred again. They arrived at the training ground with the targets already set up. There were 7 visible ones to hit and 1 hidden one behind a boulder. The goal was to hit the hidden one by throwing a kunai and deflecting it off of another thrown shuriken to hit the bullseye, all the while hitting all of the other bullseyes of the other targets. Itachi could do it with 8 to 10 visible targets, but then again, he was a genius for a reason. Alright, let's get to it right away. I'll show you how to do it, then it'll be your turn. Sound good? Naruto asked, looking at Sasuke. Sasuke just nodded. He had already been impressed that it was the actual shuriken jutsu that Naruto had been talking about. He'd be even more impressed if Naruto could actually pull it off. What Naruto hadn't realized is that in a tree some distance away, a peculiar raven was perched, watching he seen before it, making note of the 2 boys and what they were doing. It suddenly flew off, and a few minutes later, as Naruto was explaining the basis of the jutsu, a dark figure appeared in the trees, watching what was going to unfold before him. Itachi had been training with his Manjutsu Sharingan in secret when his raven he sent to keep an eye on Sasuke suddenly returned. It informed him that Naruto Uzumaki, the Kyuubi Jinchuriki and village prankster, had led him to a training ground with no one else around. This had Itachi slightly worried, not knowing what the Uzumaki child would want from his little brother. He left the clan compound in a raven shunshin to get to the location his raven told him about. Luckily it wasn't that far and didn't take long at all to get there with the speed he went. Upon arriving, he was surprised to see the 2 in a training ground, one of the unused genin ones no less, and about to practice the shuriken jutsu. It was typically something only the Uchiha worked on this early on in their ninja careers. It confused Itachi to think Naruto would know about it, let alone how to practice it. It would be interesting to see if Naruto could actually pull it off. He was perched on a tree some distance away, watching the 2 boys talk about what they were about to do. That's all there is to it really. Accuracy, precision, and timing. More so the latter than anything, Naruto informed. Sasuke nodded his head somewhat slowly, still not quite believing someone like Naruto could pull off something his brother had spent months perfecting. Sasuke watched as Naruto got ready. At this point in time, Naruto was battling with his mind and body to make sure what he was about to do wouldn't make it seem like he knew so much more than what he was letting on. He would probably have to miss a bullseye or 2 purposefully, which would actually be more challenging than doing it perfectly. He was ready as he would ever be, so he jumped up with chakra-enhanced limbs to start. He threw 8 kunai in rapid succession, 4 hitting bullseyes, 3 somewhat missing their mark, and 1 above the boulder. He then quickly pulled out a shuriken and threw it at the kunai above the boulder at double the speed of said kunai. The shuriken hit the kunai, successfully deflecting it downward, hitting the bullseye behind the boulder. He proceeded to land in a squat back at where he originally started. Sasuke had watched this, extremely impressed, with a hint of jealousy that Naruto had actually done it. Sasuke went behind the boulder only to see that Naruto hit that bullseye as well. How'd you learn to do that? The youngest to be able to do it was Nai-san, and he was 9. There's no way that someone like you can be better or come close to him. Sasuke said with confusion and a bit of anger in his voice. There was no way a 10-year-old that was at the bottom of the class that had failed the graduation exam twice could have done it. Sasuke just couldn't wrap his mind around it. What can I say? I practice a lot in my free time, Naruto said sheepishly with his right hand rubbing the back of his head. But it's not like I've mastered it or anything, 'cause look, I missed 3 of the bullseyes, Naruto said, indicating the targets with his free hand. I guess, but that still doesn't explain how you know how to do it at all in the first place. Sasuke shouted, demanding an answer from the blonde. Well, I had watched an Uchiha do it quite a few times and thought it looked cool, so I decided to learn it. He wasn't lying at least. He had been doing it at a training ground that I happened to be passing, so don't go thinking I broke into your compound or anything, Naruto said, waving his arms in front of him. Sasuke narrowed his eyes one last time. If he could learn this to at least Naruto's level, he would impress Itachi, and then his brother would probably spend more time with him. Okay, so are you going to teach me how to do it or what? Sasuke said, not really asking it. Yeah, sure, but let me see you try to do it so I know where you're at. Sasuke nodded and stepped up to the starting point. He had been practicing this for a while on his own to show his brother, but never could pull off the deflecting part. He jumped up the same way Naruto did before and threw his 8 kunai at the respective targets. He hit all 7 of the bullseyes, but when he went to throw his shuriken at the kunai above the boulder, he had been too late and missed completely. He landed with a huff, slightly irritated. He was the best in his class, and the worst student could do what he couldn't. He had to fix that. Good job, as you can see your accuracy is a bit better than mine. All you need to do is work on your timing. Try making an effort to throw the kunai above the boulder last and have a shuriken that's easy to access at the ready. You have to throw the shuriken roughly twice as fast as you threw the kunai and deflect it off the lower part of the handle of the kunai, Naruto informed, taking out a kunai to show where he was talking about. Sasuke just nodded and got his kunai out to try again. He didn't like taking advice from the dope, but he'd do anything for more time with Itachi. He jumped up again and threw his kunai. This time, when he threw the shuriken, it grazed the kunai's ring at the bottom, producing a metallic sound. He landed again with a pleased look and turned to Naruto. I guess that helped. I'm going to go back to the compound to practice it some more. I'll see you at the academy I guess, Sasuke said a little sheepishly, with his hands in his pockets while looking down. Sure sounds good. I have to get back to training too. We should train together sometime. You think we could meet here after the academy tomorrow? Naruto asked. He couldn't spend the time to come himself as he had to focus on his own personal training, but he would send a shadow clone that wasn't dumbed down like the ones he sent to the academy. Sasuke looked a little surprised at this. No one had asked him to train with them before. All anybody at the academy ever said to him was how great he was. The girls would fall over him like some sort of obnoxious fan club, while the guys just didn't really talk him out of jealousy. So this was a new experience for him. I guess we could. But you better not drag me down. If he had to train with a dope to impress Itachi, then he would have to stick it out. Great. And also, don't take what I act like at the academy seriously. I'm not really like that. It's an act to fool everyone. I suppose you can think of it as an elaborate prank, Naruto said with a finger to his chin. But anyway I guess I'll see you tomorrow. Sasuke nodded, still a little perplexed why he would put on such an act. With that they went their separate ways. Itachi had watched the encounter curiously. He had been impressed someone had been able to do the shuriken jutsu that was outside his clan and at such a young age. Itachi was by no means arrogant in his power, but he knew he was better than most ninja at Naruto's age. For it to be the Kyuubi Jinchuriki was all the more strange. To his understanding, Naruto had done poorly at the academy. This was too fishy. He had to find out more. He would follow Naruto back to wherever he planned to train and then confront him about it. As he watched the boy leave, he was surprised how fast Naruto could move. He was faster than most genin, and he was only a second-year academy student. He would have to question the boy on that as well. After about 5 minutes of heading back to training ground 27, Naruto noticed someone was following him. He had gotten pretty good at being able to tell with Anbu tailing him, or at least trying to, everywhere he went. This one was a bit better than most though, because it had taken him a little while to sense him. It was the briefest of signatures, but it was there. Whoever they were careful to hide themselves a lot more than the rest of the Anbu that hid from him, or he or she was just immensely better at it. Naruto changed directions to head to his apartment instead. He couldn't let anyone find out about his secret training ground just yet, or at least anyone interested in tailing him. He got to the roof of his apartment about 10 minutes later and decided that he'd call out to the hidden ninja. You can come out now, I know you're there. Suddenly Itachi appeared with a flicker. Naruto had suspected it to be him considering he was with Sasuke and close to the Uchiha compound. He was curious to know what he wanted. Very impressive Uzumaki-san. I didn't think academy students knew how to sense ninja, let alone a hidden one such as myself, Itachi said stoically. He was dressed in the typical Uchiha way, with a high-collared black shirt with the Uchiha crest on the back and gray pants that were tucked into his open-toed combat boots. Let's just say I'm not your typical academy student. I train very hard and I like to keep my abilities hidden from others. As you know, the civilian council doesn't think of me too highly, and if they found out that I was actually much more skilled than what my academy scores say, we both know that they would try their damnedest to get me thrown out of the program. Naruto didn't want Itachi suspecting too much, knowing that he'd blow his cover if it was considered a village issue by taking it straight to the Hokage. Yet another reason why Naruto respected the man so much. I suppose I can understand where you're coming from. But that doesn't explain why you're trying to spend time with Sasuke. Itachi had heard where Naruto learned the shuriken jutsu and it was a very probable story, so he wouldn't press into that. Well, I saw that he would always train and that he didn't have many friends in the academy. I don't really have many either with the whole village hating me thing, for whatever reason. I figured I could connect to him through training since that's all he seems to do or care about and I could show him a few things that he'd maybe want to learn. This made sense to Itachi, and regardless of who it was, he was glad that someone was actually trying to become friends with his brother. With him being an Anbu captain, he couldn't spend nearly as much time as he'd like with Sasuke. If he could have a friend to fill in the time that he couldn't, then he wouldn't stop it. Alright. Treat my brother well, Naruto-san. I'll be seeing you. And with that, Itachi vanished in his trademark shunshin. Naruto was glad for the way that ended. He didn't have to explain anything all that much, and that was okay with him. He started off to the training ground once again, only to be stopped dead in his tracks by a low and ominous sound. Well, maybe I should eat first. Over the next few months, Naruto continued with his training and sending his shadow clones to the academy, library, and with Sasuke. The academy didn't really change besides the occasional knowing glare from Sasuke after one of his infamous pranks, but he expected that. While training with Sasuke, Naruto noticed that he was more talkative than he was in the previous timeline. Probably because he only had the Uchiha arrogance and not the soon-to-be hatred to deal with. They would talk about their training methods and about their lives. Sasuke kind of felt sorry for Naruto with him having to deal with the scorn of the village all the time and for being alone with no family. He didn't think it was right for anyone to have to live that way. He was also surprised when Itachi had covered for him when his father had asked where he'd been going after classes. Itachi had said that he stayed in a training ground close to the academy to train instead of walking back to the compound, which was partly true. His father tried to argue that clan techniques shouldn't be on display for anyone to see and that he should stay in the compound. Itachi again came to the rescue by saying that it was unused and that it would be a safe place to train. Sasuke didn't know that Itachi knew about his training, but was glad that he did so he could keep doing it. Naruto was better than he was as much as it pained him to admit, and surprisingly, the so-called dobe had a lot to teach him. With Naruto's help, he was able to complete the shuriken jutsu. Not on the scale of Itachi, but he had gotten the approval of his brother after showing him nonetheless. After that his father had let him continue to train at training ground 9 as long as he came back home before sunset, which Sasuke had no qualms with. He had started to enjoy training with Naruto and would be disappointed if he was forced to stop. The day before the massacre, Naruto had to make sure to have a serious talk with Sasuke about their friendship. He needed to be certain that Sasuke wouldn't shut himself off to the world and bottle his hatred up like before. After the academy was over, they met up at their usual training ground. This time Naruto had come in person, wanting to make sure he handled this right. "Hey Sasuke, could I talk to you about something?" Naruto asked after they had done their warm-up exercises. "Yeah, I suppose," Sasuke said a little concerned. He didn't want to talk about anything deeply personal with Naruto because in all honesty, he didn't know how to handle situations like the one Naruto was in. Over the months they had kind of opened up to each other, talking about their lives and what their dreams were. He realized that Naruto had had a hard life, but the blonde brushed it off like it wasn't a big deal most of the time. "We're pretty good friends by now, right?" "I guess, if you want to call it that," Sasuke said with a bit of reluctance. He did consider Naruto a friend, but it was still difficult for him to admit it. "If something bad happened to either us, we would talk to each other about it, right?" Naruto asked, not sure how the boy would respond. "Well, I'd probably go to Itachi Nai-san first, but I guess I'd see what you had to say about it," Sasuke said, scratching his cheek. "And I'd probably listen to you if you had something on your mind." "Why do you ask?" "Oh, no reason. I was just wondering. I've never really had a friend before so I was just curious." Sasuke could definitely relate to that. "Anyway, let's get back to it. We can't be wasting our training time by talking about stupid things like that, Dadabeo," Naruto said, doing his best to school his expression to not reveal that he knew something. Sasuke just nodded, wondering what that was all about, then pushed it out of his mind to focus on their training. He had a long way to go if he wanted to catch up to Itachi. The next day was a difficult one for Naruto. He had half a mind to tell Sasuke, but he knew he couldn't. He wouldn't even believe him anyway. He had continued to train like usual. This time however, he tried to get Sasuke to train with his clone longer than they usually did, but he couldn't stop Sasuke from leaving, so he let him go. Naruto hoped he had made enough of an impression on him so that they would stay friends and Sasuke wouldn't push him away. He was tempted to send a clone to observe the ordeal, but thought better of it, knowing that Itachi would be able to find it easily, and Naruto didn't want to have any sort of suspicion from the soon-to-be missing nin. Seeing that it was past sunset, Naruto knew what Sasuke was going to walk in on. Naruto only hoped that Sasuke didn't blame him for keeping him. Over the next week, Sasuke didn't show up to the academy or the training ground. Naruto would have gone to the memorial service, but he wasn't invited, he'd be kicked out for disrespecting the memory of the great Uchiha clan or something like that. Civilians and their prejudices. He was happy that Sasuke had shown up to the academy the next week, but he had cold, dead eyes. Naruto knew them well. He was actually surprised to see Sasuke show up to their training ground that same day. He rarely spoke and kept the same lifeless expression on his face, but he was happy that he came anyway. Naruto had tried to ask him if he was okay, but he just got a cold glare as a response. He supposed it was just going to take time. Life went on like that for the rest of the academy year. That summer, Naruto didn't really see Sasuke because he had stopped coming to their training ground. So, instead, he tried to spend time with Shikamaru and Choji, or at least his clone did. Hopefully, he and Sasuke could still train together next year, but only time would tell. The day before Naruto started his third official academy year, he decided he would see how far he had come in his training. He occasionally had taken the resistance seals off around once a month to get used to his new speed and agility, but he never fully tested it. Right now he was in training ground 27, protected by numerous seals to keep safe from prying eyes. He was up to 5 on his resistant seal level, and it had been a difficult process to get there. He had been training just about every single day since he'd been back, to the point of utter exhaustion. His clone at the library and its civilian henge had also stayed and studied from the time it opened to when it closed. Naruto dreaded the end of the day when he had to dispel his clone, with a surge of knowledge flooding into his mind when he was already so fatigued each and every time. He couldn't help the painful headaches that he always had to deal with. It typically went away within the hour, but it was still rather irritating. At this point he pretty much well knew the human body like the back of his hand, knowing how to take advantage of every weak point. This included where tendons and muscles were attached, where nerves were, where chakra pathways and points were, and general pressure points. Knowledge now had been very easily attainable, with Naruto's now seemingly photographic memory. At this point, Naruto guessed that he had read and memorized half the books in the library by now. Naruto's other main focus had been Kenjutsu, but he had come to an impasse with it, having thoroughly read every available book. When he talked to the old man he would have to ask him for more reading material on it. Naruto could be in deep study of the art for days if he let himself. It was just so fascinating to him to be able to bend the laws of reality just by some markings and chakra, it enraptured him. He had still been working on his own seals diligently as well, always improving the ones he had created thus far, as well as coming up with ideas for new ones. Luckily, his clone could do all this for him, while he personally focused on the tasks that Shadow could not, such as Taijutsu and his physique. Now he had an incredibly solid build, not entirely bulky, mainly lean. He was definitely more defined than most Chunin were, and after he graduated the academy, he could probably bump that up to Jonin. Naruto was fairly happy with how far he had come in such a short amount of time. Before he never could train at this intensity, always being busy with a mission, chasing Sasuke, or dealing with the Akatsuki. Shadow clones helped too. The time to face his enemies would come soon, however, so Naruto had to get stronger now. Standing in the middle of training ground 27, Naruto dropped his resistant seals completely and proceeded to walk over to the edge of the clearing. He was going to see just how fast he could move in a straight line, though an improved version of the Shunshin. After that he would test his agility by going through an obstacle course he had set up. The blonde got ready to go, a look of utter determination of his face. He eyed where he wanted to go, a marker at the other end of the training ground about a quarter-mile away. If someone had been watching, they would have seen Naruto at one end, then just simply watch him disappear, reappearing at the opposite end almost instantly. This improved version of the Shunshin was better because it isn't really a jutsu. Naruto could move that fast almost entirely physically with a bit of chakra enhancement. It allowed for much more maneuverability, unlike the rather straight lines you had to travel with the traditional Shunshin. Not only that, this version could be used in very short distances, where the regular Shunshin required you move to a mid to long range location. Slightly winded from going at his top speed for the first time, he turned around with a satisfied expression on his face. "That'll do for now," Naruto said with a smirk. He couldn't wait until he surprised everyone with his newfound speed. He had only ever been this fast in his Kyuubi Link mode. He couldn't imagine how fast he would be now. But sadly, he would have to wait to find out. Next up was the obstacle course. After fully, but briefly, recovering from his mad dash, Naruto walked over to the starting line of the obstacle course. The course was set up so that he would have to bounce and weave through small ground markers in the general direction that the markers would allow. His goal would be to go through the markers perfectly in the smallest amount of time possible. The total distance he would have to travel would be about half a mile, but he planned on doing it in less than 10 seconds, well, that was the goal anyway. Naruto began in a burst of wind, speeding through the markers as fast and perfectly as he was able, only making the smallest of mistakes. Once he reached the end of the course, he stopped the stopwatch that had been in his hand and smirked. He had done it in 10.4 seconds. The blonde nodded contently and then decided to test out his chakra reserves. Since the Kyuubi's chakra had been flowing through him more and more, his chakra reserves had increased dramatically, on top of the training he was already doing to expand his chakra coils. He decided the best way to test this would be to create as many shadow clones as possible, but he soon realized that the training ground probably wouldn't be big enough. So he settled on creating 500 shadow clones and have all of them create and hold the Rasengan. If he felt like he could manage it, he'd have 50 or so turn the spiraling chakra into the Futon. Rasen Shuriken. He created the clones and had them all perform the task. He had mastered it some time ago, so he didn't have to have another clone help create the blue orb of destruction. Another was still needed for the Futon. Rasen Shuriken, however. With his clone's hands full, Naruto was glad he learned how to perform Seal-less Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, having 50 shadow clones create one shadow clone to each prepare the blonde's deadliest wind jutsu. After some effort, all 50 shadow clones created and sustained the Rasen Shuriken, but Naruto was feeling the drain. He had all of them dispel the jutsu as well as the clones after about 30 seconds of holding the jutsu. Trying to gauge where his reserves were at, Naruto figured he was down to an eighth of his total. This had been the most drained he felt since he had come back. He could recover within a few hours of rest and a good meal. Since he tested himself today, he decided to take the rest of the day off. Sadly, he couldn't test his taijutsu without a sparring partner, so he would have to wait for that test. Naruto was about to reactivate his resistance seals, but decided against it. In his exhausted state, it would be much too troublesome to deal with. Soon after having that thought, the blonde realized he had been spending too much time with Shikamaru. Naruto left his training ground after deactivating his privacy and barrier seals to head for the best place for recovery food, Ichiraku. The next day, Naruto found himself going to the academy in person, a sort of tradition for first days. He knew it was going to be uneventful, but he felt compelled to go anyway. Naruto entered the classroom, only to see that only one other student was there. "Yes, I'm early," he muttered. Naruto tried to make a habit to be at least 10 minutes early to everything, knowing what it's like to have to wait for someone for hours for no earthly reason. Kakashi. Naruto recognized a lone girl in the classroom to be one Hinata Hyuga. "I always liked her. She was always nice to me, trying her best because of me, she even Naruto abruptly came to a halt in his thoughts. "That's right, she said she loved me back when I fought Nagati," trailed off in his thoughts. At the time, he didn't think much of it. He thought that she just said that as a sign of devotion to their friendship, but now that he started thinking back on it all of the signs and experiences he had had up to that point with her, even when they were fighting the Gyuubi and its Jinchuriki, it all suddenly clicked in his head. She loved him. He never gave it a second thought before, him always needing to focus on other things, like Sasuke, the Akatsuki, and Madara. Naruto had been standing a few steps into the classroom, wide-eyed, staring directly at the Hyuga girl. And then Naruto, why are you staring at me? Hinata stuttered, looking at her desk, giving the occasional glance towards the blonde. Her face was bright red, her already having been blushing slightly when she noticed him come in the room. When he had stopped suddenly and started staring at her, it had her just about ready to fall out of her chair from embarrassment. Naruto blinked, then looked down with a sheepish expression, rubbing the back of his head. "Oh, sorry Hinata, I was just, remembering something that happened a while ago. I didn't mean to stare," he said, even though he knew that it was actually some years into the future. It's okay, I don't mind if you stare," the rosy-faced girl said, the last part barely a whisper. Did you say something?" Naruto asked. He hadn't heard what she said, being engrossed in his thoughts. Hinata just furiously shook her head, her blush as present as ever. Now that the blonde actually understood what her blushing was all about, he couldn't help but blush a little himself. This went unnoticed by Hinata, however, her face being buried in her hands. It was almost too much for her. Naruto quickly took his seat at the desk to the right of the one Hinata was sitting at. Naruto always sat in the back row, or at least his shadow clones did, but he decided he'd change that this year. As the awkward silence began to build, Naruto couldn't help but break it. "So why are you here so early, Hinata?" The indigo-haired girl almost visibly flinched at the question. Naruto was actually talking to her. Sure, he occasionally gave a comment or two throughout the years, but he never really held a conversation with her. She didn't really know how to respond. Oh, well, you don't have to tell me if you don't want to," Naruto said sheepishly, looking away from the girl. "And no, it's fine." Hinata barely managed to get out. "My father said I should be early, it being the first day of the year and all." Naruto turned his head to look at her again, seeing her looking down, poking her index fingers together nervously. "Oh, is that right? I kinda thought the same thing, haha," Naruto said, scratching his cheek with his finger, chuckling awkwardly. He really didn't know how to handle this girl right now. He had gotten used to girls and talking to them being around Iro-sen all the time in his previous life, but this was so much different for some reason. They let the awkward silence between them grow once more, Naruto furiously racking his brain to come up with something to talk about, but came up with nothing. Hinata was no better off, but she was berating herself for not being able to talk openly with the blonde. They sat in silence until Iruka finally arrived, giving them an excuse for the silence that had grown. They were both relieved when he walked in. Iruka gave a smile to both of them. "Good morning. You two are awfully early," Iruka said, setting his things down at his desk. "Well, we're not all that early. Class is supposed to start in like 10 minutes, Naruto replied. "Naruto, you being 10 minutes early is unheard of," Iruka said with a deadpan expression. "Yeah, well, maybe I'll change that this year," Naruto replied with a huff, crossing his arms. "Right, and I'll take over for the current Anbu captain tomorrow," Iruka said sarcastically while he began writing on the chalkboard. Soon after, the rest of the students began making their way in. Naruto was relieved to see Sasuke walk through the door as he proceeded to walk over and sit on the blonde's left-hand side. Naruto just stared at him with a slightly bewildered look. That was becoming a trend today that the blonde really didn't appreciate. Sasuke gave a glance towards Naruto, his hands folded over in front of his face. "Reason you're staring, dope?" was his cold response. Sorry, no. I'm just a little surprised you sat next to me is all, not that I didn't want you to or anything," Naruto said with a half smile, rubbing the back of his head with his right hand. "Whatever. Listen, I know I've been acting fairly harsh towards you, and you don't really deserve it. We." Sasuke paused, once again glancing at Naruto, "should train together again." Naruto took a moment to process this information and then beamed at his regained friend. "Yeah, sure thing. But we may have to go to a different training ground, cause the one we used to go to is occupied by the new Team 9 under Mito guy," Naruto informed somewhat enthusiastically. "That isn't a problem. We can use my clan compound. Kami knows that no one else is going to use the training grounds there anymore," Sasuke uttered lowly, with a twinge of sadness and quite a bit of anger laced in his voice. "It kind of sucks being alone there all the time, as I'm sure you can understand." Naruto nodded, face growing grimmer by the second since the mention of his compound. "I mean, are you sure? I'm pretty confident we can find another place." "No, it's fine. We can use it. After class then." It wasn't really a question, not really leaving any room to argue. Naruto gave a resigned nod. "Alright, yeah, that's fine." It was Sasuke's turn to nod. "I have to get stronger because I'm going to kill my brother," he said with a chilling voice. Naruto looked down at his desk with a pained expression. He had to get Sasuke out of that way of thinking. Maybe he could tell Sasuke the truth one day. Soon after, they both focused on Iruka as he started the first day announcements. While the two boys had been talking, most of the girls in the class had been staring daggers into Naruto, namely Ino Yamanaka and Sakura Haruno. "How dare he talk to my Sasuke?" they both thought simultaneously. Naruto had noticed it, but he didn't really pay it any mind. He had felt killer intent above and beyond anything that those two could even remotely dish out. Sasuke had noticed as well, he just didn't care. He was actually glad Naruto decided to come personally today. Sasuke knew the blonde sent clones to class every day while he trained elsewhere. While at the academy, Sasuke could usually tell if Naruto sent a shadow clone in his stead or not, usually by the way Naruto acted. It pissed him off however that he couldn't pull the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu off, so he could do the same thing. But he knew that his chakra reserves just couldn't match up to the blonde chakra tank. So in the meantime, Sasuke would reluctantly sit through the academy, bored out of his mind. During Iruka's lecture, Naruto's thoughts had wandered back to Hinata. He would really have to figure out what to do about her. He needed to learn how to act like his former self around her because things couldn't continue like they did today. He'd have to work on that. But for now, he'd just have to make do. Maybe he'd learn something from his interactions with her this time around. As Naruto's thoughts slowly drifted off, so did he, getting a very annoyed expression out of Iruka. Naruto didn't really care, though. The lecture was boring anyway. That was until a chalkboard eraser came soaring through the air, aimed directly at the dozing blonde. Bonk. A week later, Naruto was once again at training ground 27. He had already done his physical workout for the day, his resistance seals at 6 to push himself a bit. He was focusing on something new. Before he knew he could sense people in Sage mode, as well as Malice in Kyuubi mode, but he wanted to work on being a sensor without either. It would improve his situational awareness substantially, more than it already is. He had gotten the idea from one of the Chunin scrolls his clone happened to find in the library that a Chunin had left at a table. The scroll described a flare jutsu that let other ninja know where the individual was by sending out a pulse of chakra. While practicing in the confines of his many seals, Naruto realized that he could sense things with it, although faint. It required a large amount of chakra for most ninja, but more or less unaffected Naruto. He had begun playing with it, trying to figure out how to send out pulses faint enough so that Naruto wouldn't be broadcasting his location to enemy shinobi. The concept was like how sensory shinobi can detect chakra presences, only much more detailed. Naruto was sitting down in a meditative state practicing it when he was alerted that someone was close by one of his seals. This particular seal was an area detection seal that would send the creator signal if someone were to trip it, much like a motion sensor. All it required to work was that the caster was in the area that the creator lined out and it covered a much larger area than his barrier seals. When alerted, a seal would light up on Naruto's wrist, giving off a slight tingly sensation. Upon opening his eyes, Naruto stood up to look in the direction he felt the person at. He was surprised when he saw a purple-haired kunoichi with a katana strapped to her back in standard Anbu gear with a white mask that looked like a cat. She looked around cautiously, making Naruto a little nervous when she got really close to the edge of his barrier seals. What's she doing here? I didn't think anybody came to this place. Naruto harshly whispered, wait, could it be that Anko reported the area? Naruto was confident his barrier seals would keep her out, but what he didn't need right now is suspicion from anyone that rank. The Anbu continued to look around until she bumped into the side of an invisible wall, knocking her down on her behind. She was now sporting a confused expression, not that Naruto could see it. The purple-haired girl stood up and prodded the invisible wall with her finger. She couldn't see anything out of the ordinary on the other side of it, but it was strange that it was there in the first place. After studying the wall a little further, she gave a huff with her hands on her hips. Naruto at this point was ready to bail if she knew a way to get past the barrier, however unlikely it was. It also helped that Jiraiya and Kakashi were the only ones that knew anything about seals. Naruto's still worried, though. Anko was right, something is up with this place. I'll inform the Hokage to inform a seal master to deal with this, the purple-haired Anbu uttered softly with slight annoyance. She then turned around and sped off to report her finding to the Hokage. With a sigh of relief, Naruto slumped his tense shoulders. Whew, that was close. But now I have to find a new training ground, Naruto angrily muttered, I think I can handle the Forest of Death, and to my knowledge, nobody ever goes there, with the Chunin exams being an exception. I probably wouldn't even have to put barrier seals up. Naruto walked over and started deactivating his seals once he was sure the Anbu was out of sight completely. Once he was done, he started off towards the infamous training ground 44. This place won't be nearly as bad as last time. Not only were the creatures a problem, but enemy genin were everywhere ready to ambush as well as that snake team. Naruto was definitely glad he wouldn't have to deal with Orochimaru for at least a few more years. The blonde was pretty confident he could beat the snake by then, though. With his renewed strength and access to a much more controlled malevolent chakra, Orochimaru was in for a beating that he'd never expect. Naruto came out of his thoughts once he arrived at the barbed fence that marked the entrance of training ground 44. He stood there and stared a moment at the ominous-looking forest. Well, no time like the present. I'll have to show the animals who's top dog around here too, just like in Genbu, Turtle Island, and I won't even need your chakra to do a kurama. These animals will be weak as shit compared to the animals there. I kinda miss the big gorilla, though. Naruto hopped over the fence with ease and dashed off into the forest. It's not like you could actually use it if you had to use it, Naruto heard the fox lazily say in his mind. Yeah, well, oh shut up. If Naruto could see her, he knew Kurama would have that smirk on her face. He loved the furball, but she could be so annoying sometimes. It took him a while, but Naruto finally found a clearing big enough and deep enough in the forest where he could train without being bothered or be in fear of prying eyes. This forest would be a great place to train his sensing abilities too, with the abundant wildlife all around. Naruto spawned a few shadow clones to work on that while he began to wander around to get a better feel for the forest. During his Chunin exams, Naruto remembered how intimidating the forest was, but now it wasn't so bad at all, a change the blonde really liked. A little later, Naruto was back in the clearing and spawned a few hundred clones with a thought and had them scatter. He knew there were maps of the forest already, but Naruto wanted to make his map. If he was going to conquer this place, then he was going to be damn thorough about it, mapping and all. Looks like I have a bit of work ahead of me, the blonde said with a confident smirk. Naruto was working on his wind manipulation when he received the memories of a few of his shadow clones. Shadow clones won't cut it for that. I'll have to pay it a visit, Naruto said smirking. He then began making his way towards the location his shadow clones were at. Naruto kind of expected it, but not as soon as this. What his clones encountered were spiders. Giant spiders. The creatures themselves weren't a problem, as his clones could easily avoid them. What killed them was, by the look of it, the king spider. Apparently, his clones had gotten a little too close to where the queen resided. If Naruto was going to conquer this forest, he might as well start by making the current leaders answer to him. After speeding through the trees, Naruto landed in front of a giant web-like structure that was bigger than most houses. Well, this looks like the place, Naruto said with his fists on his hips. At that point, the Jinchuriki was completely surrounded by angry-looking spiders, itching from the blonde to make a move. Looking around, Naruto gave out a pulse of chakra which definitely didn't go unnoticed by the black arachnids. Based on what he felt, Naruto guessed there was about 100 around him. Many more underground. Well. Let's go. Naruto shouted, getting in a ready stance. A moment later, all the spiders that encircled him charged. The first spider that reached him, Naruto drove his fist into its head, feeling the satisfying crunch against his fist. With the first one down, Naruto became a blonde blur, using his fists and kunai to wreak havoc on the horde of spiders. Each spider went down one after another, the creatures trying their best to flank and take the orange-clad human by surprise. Naruto drove a kunai into the belly of a spider that tried to pounce on him, quickly pulling it out to block the fangs of another that came from his left. Quickly building chakra in his left hand, Naruto drove a blue orb of rotating chakra on the spider's underside. Rasengan. Naruto spun around and jumped in the air just as two more spiders landed on his previous location. Naruto threw two kunai with explosive tags on them, detonating on impact and sending spider guts everywhere. While in the air, a spider that was larger than most jumped down and tried to land on the destructive human. Naruto saw this and gave a smirk just as the bigger spider landed on top of him, burying its stinger into the chest of the blonde. Landing on the ground, the larger spider moved off the intruder with satisfaction, only to be thoroughly surprised when the human poofed out of existence with three Rasengans ripping its back apart simultaneously. Giving a screech of pain, the spider curled up the way spiders do when they die. Naruto landed on the ground after jumping off the fleshy heap, his two shadow clones dispelling themselves. The remaining spiders surrounded the blonde, now too afraid to attack after they bore witness to the death of one of the fiercest arachnids in the forest. "Aw come on, are you scared?" Naruto mocked. He was soon silenced however, when he heard a few loud thuds against the ground behind him. Naruto slowly turned around to see a spider that had to stand at least 4 meters tall. Naruto looked up at the giant creature with no fear in his eyes. The massive spider angrily stared back with all 8 eyes. "So you must be the king my clones bumped into. Nice to meet ya," Naruto said with a beaming smile. "As you can see, none of your spiders stood a chance against me, so I'll offer you this, obey me and I'll spare the rest." Naruto wasn't sure if the king could understand him, but he thought it was worth a shot. For emphasis, 20 of the blonde shadow clones stood in the trees, each holding a futon. Rasen shuriken, ready to unleash them at any moment. This didn't go unnoticed by the king. The sound of them alone was enough to tell that the spinning wide orbs would have no problem wiping out the rest of its children, including itself. As if to add to the effect, Naruto leaked out a bit of Kurama's chakra, thoroughly making some of the smaller spider quiver. The king gave a hiss, causing Naruto to raise an eyebrow. "It would help if I spoke spider. Apparently he can more or less understand me, though," Naruto muttered, his hand to his chin. After a few tense moments, tense for the spiders that is, Naruto brightened his expression and snapped his fingers. "That's it. Hold on a moment." Naruto's sudden outburst caused more than a few flinches from the black arachnids. Naruto sat down and unsealed some of his fuinjutsu supplies and began writing out script on 2 pieces of seal paper. After about 15 minutes of the king watching the blonde curiously, he suddenly stood up. "Alright, all done. Hopefully with these, we can properly communicate," Naruto exclaimed excitedly. He then placed one of the seals on his forehead. "Okay, I'm going to have to place this on your head, if you understand, lower your head." The king spider looked upon the blonde suspiciously for a few moments, but then complied and lowered itself to the ground, maintaining as much dignity as possible in front of all its subjects. Naruto placed the seal on top of the spider's head and activated it. Moments later, the spider heard the blonde's voice in its head. "Hey there. Can you understand me now? What is this you have done?" The spider responded in a low hiss-like voice. "I simply made telepathic seal converters so we can speak telepathically. It only works if we're right next to each other though. To be honest, I wasn't sure if it would work. I've been working on this particular seal for some time, but haven't had anything to really test it on," Naruto said with his hand to his chin. The king just eyed the human, never relinquishing its suspicion of the boy. "Why have you done this?" the king asked in its unique voice. "To make a deal with you. You and your spiders serve under me, and I won't kill your queen." "Sound good?" Naruto said with a grin. The king didn't visibly or audibly respond for a minute. "You don't leave me with much a choice. We will serve under you, but we will not leave this forest," the king finally responded. "That's fine. I just don't you to go attack me or my friends. Plus I have this idea. I would like you to guard the forest from intruders, unless it's for the Chunin exams that is." No response. "You are quite strong for such a little creature," the king said with a hiss, "not like those who typically wander in here. You have proven your strength and we will do as you ask." "Awesome. Another thing I was thinking about on my way here was that if you would mind if I created a summoning contract for your kind. It would take a few days to draft up, as well as apply the necessary seals for those who I would summon." Naruto looked up at the king expectantly. "I will consider it and I will have to discuss it with our queen as well. It is interesting. No one before has been interested in summoning contracts with our kind. You have my interest human. Now leave this place. My kin is not fond of your continuous presence here." The king spider then began to turn around. "One more thing before you go," Naruto said, "how is it that you're so intelligent? I've encountered intelligent animals before, I just didn't expect one to be in this forest. There are many of us, champions of our own species. There remain a few more in this very forest. Most however, hide themselves away. Now beggin'. Naruto just gave the king one last smile before he turned to leave. Man, this is going to be so cool. Creating my very own summoning contract, who'd have thought? Naruto happily thought to himself. As Naruto began walking back, the spiders cleared a path for the frightening blonde, something Naruto couldn't help but snicker at. Well, this is it. The training ground we'll be using is just over there, Sasuke said, indicating a training field a short distance away. It took a week for Naruto to actually come and take up Sasuke's offer to train at the Uchiha compound. Naruto himself wasn't a big fan of the idea, but Sasuke insisted, so the Jinchuriki relented and went. The Uchiha compound had been really impressive to Naruto so far. It definitely showed that the Uchiha took themselves too seriously as one of the most powerful and wealthiest clans in Konoha. All of the homes were elaborate, made with the highest quality building materials, yet they were structured in a simple but elegant manner. The boys made their way over to where Sasuke lives, the most elegant and elaborate house in the middle of the compound. We'll be eating and resting here when we're done, the raven-haired boy said. Naruto gave a nod and proceeded to follow the Uchiha to the aforementioned training ground. Wow, Sasuke, I know living by yourself must be lonely, but I can't imagine how you feel with such a big place all to yourself. Sasuke just gave a grunt in response. After they got to the middle of the training field, the boys stopped. So, what do you want to work on today? Taijutsu? Ninjutsu? Target practice? Or we could always do some chakra control. Hide me Naruto, Sasuke interrupted. He had a determined look in his eye and voiced his reasoning. I know you're stronger than you let on, and that you're a little better than me. I need to see how big of a gap there is between our power. Naruto looked at Sasuke with a fake incredulous look. If only Sasuke knew how big that gap actually was. I don't know, I think we're pretty neck and neck. I just know a few more things is all. Naruto hated lying to him, but he really didn't want to reveal how strong he was to anyone just yet. Naruto also knew that Sasuke wouldn't take it well if the Uchiha found out just how big that gap was. Naruto would wait for now. Naruto, I know you're lying. Whenever we get done training, you're not even winded, Sasuke tried to argue. You can really just chalk that up to high endurance. I've always had crazy high stamina, you know that from the academy spars my shadow clone has with the other students, Naruto tired to defend. Anyway, I don't think it's a good idea right now. Maybe another time. Sasuke stood there with his hands in his pockets, glaring at the blonde, not taking no for an answer. Even if you say no, I'll just start attacking you and you'll have to defend yourself. Naruto sighed. He knew he shouldn't fight Sasuke. The Uchiha would know just how much the blonde was holding back. Okay fine. But can we do it tomorrow? I've already done my physical training today so I won't be at my best, like I'm sure you want me to be. Sasuke narrowed his eyes before giving a reluctant nod. Fine, tomorrow it is then. Let's work on ninjutsu then. I need to get my Kaiten. Kakakyu no Jutsu, fire release. Great fireball jutsu, down. It's still too weak. What'll you work on? From my understanding, you don't have any other ninjutsu besides the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Sasuke said, expectantly looking at Naruto. Well actually I do. I'm wind-natured so I can work on some wind jutsu. Naruto wasn't lying either. Naruto's wind jutsu currently numbered at a measly 1, even though it was his strongest jutsu at the moment. He needed to learn some other ones. Sasuke nodded, then gestured with his hand to get Naruto to show him. Naruto went through the proper hand signs. Futen. Tatapa, wind release. Great breakthrough. A ball of air burst from Naruto's mouth but felt little more than a breeze upon release. Naruto had seen Orochimaru use the jutsu and the hand signs weren't that difficult to remember. Naruto just couldn't get the power behind it like the Snake Sannin could, but that was to be expected from only seeing it done a few times. I'd say you need to work on that one dope, Sasuke said with slightly cold tone. You're never going to let that nickname go are you Sasuke team? Naruto shot back with a smirk. Not on your life, dope. They separated and walked to create some space for each other's ninjutsu training, Sasuke with his fire and Naruto with his wind. Luckily the next day, Naruto didn't have to send a clone to the academy. Now he would be able to go and spar with Sasuke that morning to get it out of the way so he could focus on his own training. An hour past dawn, Naruto showed up to the Uchiha compound. Sasuke. We gonna do this or what? Naruto yelled at the entrance. He saw Sasuke turn the corner of one of the vacant houses and start walking towards him with a smirk on the raven-haired boy's face. Yeah dope, let's do it. They both walked to the training ground that they trained at the day before. I'm gonna have to up my resistance seals to 8 if I want to hold back enough. That should slow me down to around his level Naruto thought to himself. They squared off facing each other, each with his own smirk. So how we gonna call this? Till one gives up. Naruto wanted to establish at least some form of rules. Yeah, that or the other one can't continue. Everything is allowed, but we should probably avoid kill shots, Sasuke said, slightly surprising Naruto, albeit internally. Sasuke really was different in this timeline than he was in the previous, but yet he still had the same ambition. Alright, sounds good. Naruto popped a clone into existence. He'll call the match. Sasuke nodded. The clone raised his hand, then dropped it, yelling, "Begin." And at that, the boy sprang into action. Sasuke started by throwing several kunai and shuriken at the blonde, only to be countered by the same boy with his own thrown weapons, defecting everything Sasuke threw. But Sasuke had followed his thrown weapons to follow up on them. Naruto was impressed with his speed for a third-year academy student, but it was still painfully slow to the blonde. Once the weapons were deflected, Sasuke feinted a right rook and attempted a leg sweep. Naruto barely jumped up out of the way, but towards his opponent and threw a series of punches. A few hit their mark, but were otherwise deflected by the Uchiha boy. Sasuke jumped back and started going through seals. He landed on the tiger seal and unleashed a fireball about the same height Naruto was. It once again was very slow, and Naruto managed to dodge out of the way. Man, he isn't playing around, Naruto thought, going through a few seals himself while he was still in the air from dodging the fireball. Gyuten. Datapa. This wind jutsu was a lot more powerful than what Sasuke had seen Naruto do the day before, and it was much faster. Sasuke tried his best to dodge the incoming projectile and barely managed to avoid it with it hitting the left side of his body. With a wince, Sasuke skidded on the ground, then started to chase after the blonde, only to be surprised when he didn't see him. He had a sinking feeling and spun around only for his face to meet a fist, sending him sprawling backwards on the ground. Alright, I give. Nice one, dope. I didn't think you were that fast, Sasuke said with a smirk, wiping his chin with the back of his hand. Naruto reached his hand down to help the boy up. Well, technically what you saw wasn't speed. The me that you were fighting was a shadow clone, but I dispelled him when you were trying to dodge its jutsu. I had substituted him out during our exchange with the Kawarimi no jutsu to end up behind you. All I had to do then was come up behind you and deliver the finishing move, Naruto said in an informing, almost teaching voice. Sasuke grabbed the offered hand and was hoisted up by the blonde. That was fun, dope, we should do it again sometime, Sasuke said with a smirk and glare in his eye. Yeah, but not anytime soon. We both need to get stronger to see any real progress. How about we spar once a month to see how we've progressed through our training? Naruto offered. He didn't want Sasuke to bug him every day for a spar because he had his own training to do. Yeah, sounds good. I will beat you one of these days. Well, only time will tell. Anyway, I need to go run some errands in the village, then get to training. I'll see you at the academy tomorrow. As Naruto said this, he began walking out of the compound and held up his left hand as a goodbye gesture. In all honesty, Naruto didn't have anything to do in the village, but he figured it would keep Sasuke off his back as to the location of his training. No one needed to know that right now. Sasuke just nodded through this. Whatever, dope, Jana, see you later. Sasuke turned around to do his training for the day as the blonde walked out. As Naruto was walking down the street, he couldn't help but notice how difficult it was to move in the 8th level of his resistance seal. The seal was designed to up the resistance factor by 2 at every level, making it progressively more difficult to move up. This could be tweaked to 1.5 times instead of 2 if it was too much, but Naruto more often than not just bore through it. At this level, however, it was just ridiculous. He had done it to make it fair against Sasuke. Well, he fought, he had to pour all of his efforts into moving at the speed he did. There was no way he'd be fast enough to get behind Sasuke like he seemingly did in the spar, so he managed to pull off a substitution while Sasuke hadn't noticed. It was going to take a long while before he got used to this level of resistance. Luckily, he found out that with chakra-enhanced muscles, he could lessen the effect of the seal while still applying the same force to his muscles. This also doubled as precise chakra control exercises, something Naruto couldn't keep up for very long. As Naruto came to the edge of the village, he toned down his resistance seal a couple notches so he could move to training ground 44 quickly and unseen. As a precaution though, he always sent off a clone to walk around the village and eventually back to his apartment just so no one got suspicious, not that many would really care. But still, he didn't want to take the risk. Naruto arrived at the fence of the forest and proceeded to jump it and run in. Once he was at the clearing he usually trained in, he made 300 clones. Alright, you 100, work on wind manipulation and possibly come up with some new jutsu if you can. You 100, work on lightning manipulation. The last 100, work on fuinjutsu and perfecting brush strokes, as well as coming up with some ideas of new seals. Go. Naruto commanded and sent his clones to work. Alright, now let's get the 8th level under control. With that, Naruto upped his seal once again and began a grueling physical workout that he'd work on the rest of the academy year. Over the next 5 months, Naruto continued to send clones to train and spar with Sasuke. He realized that Sasuke couldn't ever hit him after the next couple of spars, so sending clones in his place wouldn't be much of a problem anymore. However, Naruto did stop sending clones to the library, having read everything and learning everything he could that would be useful for him, at least until he could get into the restricted sections. Remembering Haku, he also started to practice with Senbon needles, perfecting his accuracy to hit critical locations and pressure points to incapacitate his opponents. There were quite a few clones that had gone through the process as well, not appreciating being the targets for target practice. He had also made some headway on his lightning manipulation. He was by no means at Chidori level, but he could pulse lightning out of his hand without feeling numb afterwards, and in his book that was immense progress. He was glad he made his clones handle all the backfires that messing with the unstable element caused. After seeing Sasuke and Kakashi do so much with it, Naruto kind of wanted to learn it. What he hadn't counted on was that after a little bit of work, lightning was coming pretty easily for him, or at least easier than it should. He guessed that it was his second chakra nature, because it still was by no means nearly as easy as wind manipulation, not that it was easy by any stretch. He had also developed a few wind ninjutsu. Not very powerful ones mind you, but hey, it was progress. After messing with wind chakra for so long, he also got the idea of enhancing his moves with not just chakra, but wind chakra. If it was anything like his Rasengan, then it would up his power considerably. He had to make sure to be careful though because the Rasen Shuriken destroyed his arm the first time he used it successfully. The idea was still in its infancy, but he had started to work on it a little. He knew it was going to take a long while to perfect it though. Luckily, he still had 6 years until shit really hit the fan. Currently, Naruto was once again in his favorite clearing in the Forest of Death when one of his clone scouts reported in by dispelling itself. Well I guess I should have expected her sooner or later. She does come to this place pretty often if the previous timeline was any indication. He was surprised that it actually took this long for her to find him. He had dispelled all of his clones that were training just in time for a certain purple-haired Kunoichi to land about 30 feet from him, still beautiful as ever. What the hell is a gaki like you doing in this place? Are you fucking stupid or just plain crazy? Asked a purple-haired woman with an incredulous expression on her face. Well, I like to train here. I don't have to worry about other people bothering me all the time, Naruto said somewhat sheepishly, rubbing the back of his head. Train here? Do you know what this place is, you fucking brat? Death is in the title for a reason. She somewhat yelled out, but it didn't intimidate Naruto in the slightest, putting her slightly on edge. Yeah, and that's exactly the kind of deterrent I need for people to stay away. Plus all the weapons and stuff the beaten or dead genin left after the Chunin exams 2 months ago were pretty helpful, Naruto said, still sheepishly, but in a tone that showed no fear. The way the kid played off seeing dead bodies lightly unnerved her, then she processed the other part of the statement. Wait, just how long have you been coming here? Anko asked a little shocked. For someone as young as this kid to be able to stay in here for that period of time, it was unheard of. Well, I had to move training grounds around 6 months ago after the first one was found. Funny enough you were the first one to find me there, as well as this place. At this Anko scrunched her nose up in confusion before it dawned on her. Wait, you're the one that placed those seals all over the place. There's no way a gaki like you knows about seals to that extent. She yelled in a disbelieving tone. Well I like to think I do, but you don't have to believe me. I could prove it to you sometime if you'd like. Oh yeah, I have a question for you. Anko looked at him a bit taken aback by his casual tone. Almost all the genin she had ever seen in this forest were always on edge, fearful even, and even more so whenever she interacted with them. For an academy kid like this to be acting this way in front of her unsettled her further. She just nodded at Naruto's statement acknowledging him to continue. Well, back at the other training ground. I knew you couldn't deal with the seals so it was understandable why you left, but why did it take so long for someone to come check the place out and why was it an Anbu and not you? Naruto asked genuinely curious, although he had guessed what it was. Anko paused before answering. Well, I was on my way to a mission and decided to take a shortcut and happened upon it. As to why it wasn't me, I wasn't that interested in it. I just reported it like any other shinobi loyal to the village in that position would do. Anko didn't really know why she was telling this kid this, but his easygoing nature made it easier for her to talk to him, albeit unnerving given the circumstances. Yeah, I figured. Oh by the way, I didn't catch your name. A fucking gaki like you doesn't need to know who I am. I'm taking you to the Hokage to explain yourself, Anko said in a colder tone, crossing her arms. Well, why would you need to do that? I'm just an academy student working on my skills to become a ninja. Is that really so bad? Anko didn't know whether to take him seriously or not, but she knew in her mind that he wasn't simply an academy student. There was something very off about him. She narrowed her eyes dangerously at him, having no effect on the blonde. Receiving silence from her, Naruto came up with a possible solution. How about this? We have a friendly spar of sorts. If I win, then you don't tell anyone about what I do in here. If you win, then I'll come quietly to see the Hokage with you." Anko just smirked and then chuckled darkly. "Right, cuss, I'm just going to let you make a deal when you have no fucking right to. Watch what you say, kid, it could get you killed or worse," she said, losing all humor in her speech. "Oh come on, don't be like that. If you know you can beat me, then what's the harm in showing me?" "The way you put it, it seemed like it wouldn't take you very long at all," Naruto said with an innocent smile. "You know what, fine. But if you get seriously hurt or killed, it's on you." Naruto smirked at her remark. He knew that he couldn't afford to play around with seals on, as Anko was one of the village elite jonin, so he completely deactivated them. After he did that, his smirk grew into a devious grin, one that people would recognize as his prankster grin. Anko saw this and got into her battle stance and prepared to lunge. What she didn't count on was that right before she was going to take the Gaki down, the blonde just vanished. She had never seen someone move so fast. Before she knew it, he was behind her with a kunai to her throat. "Well, I guess that's my win." Anko let a chill go down her spine. She doubted that was his full speed, so just how fast was he? She reluctantly nodded after a moment and the blonde pulled away from her, prompting her to turn around and face the winner. "How the hell do you move so fast? That was fucking ridiculous." Anko exclaimed, demanding an answer while rubbing her neck. "Lots of training. Hard, brutal, training. But to be honest with you, I didn't know I was that fast. I haven't tested it in a while, so, sorry, I guess," Naruto said, rubbing the back of his head. At this point, Anko just refused to believe that this blonde could exist. To know how to move that fast at such a young age, Itachi didn't even compare to that. She had seen him and a fight or two around the village before he went and betrayed Konoha. To think that someone could be better than him, it sent another shiver down her spine. She shook her head to get out of her daze and looked back at the blonde. With a serious expression, she asked, "Who are you, Gaki?" Once again, this was more of a demand, spoken in a low tone. "Naruto Uzumaki, your friendly neighborhood prankster, annoying the shit out of everyone that he can, at your service." As he said this, he took an extravagant and exaggerated bow with a smile on his face. At the mention of his name, Anko narrowed her eyes a little. Where has she heard that name before? It was so familiar. She internally cursed herself for not paying attention to village affairs. This boy was interesting though, that was for sure. "If you want to spar again, I can throw my resistant seals back on to make it more of a challenge for you." As the blonde said this, Anko couldn't help but notice that there was no condescension, judgment, or arrogance of any kind in his voice, but pure genuineness. "What makes you think I need you to? You just caught me off guard, it won't go like that next time," Anko said with a huff as she crossed her arms underneath her bust, making it that more pronounced. Naruto had to look away for fear of a blush as he put his hands behind his head. "Heh, so there's going to be a next time, is there?" When Naruto said this, Anko realized what she said and couldn't help but widen her eyes, but then quickly closed them with a huff. "Well, you're definitely more interesting to fight than most other jonin, so I don't see why not. Well, I'll be here if you ever want to go again. Also, I still don't know your name," Naruto said while scratching his cheek, knowing full well what her name was, but she didn't know that. "Anko Mitarashi." She said this with a grin, having moved her hands to her hips. "And if you fuck with me, I'll fucking kill you." She kept up her grin as she said this. No matter how old Naruto was mentally, that was still a little unnerving the way she could say that with that facial expression. "Well, it's nice to meet you, Anko. I take it you'll honor our agreement and not tell anyone about me?" Naruto asked a little cautiously. Yeah, don't worry about it, Gaki. I'd rather keep you to myself anyway. If I told anybody they'd just ruin my fun again." She said this with her trademark grin. Naruto couldn't help but shake his head at this. Same old Anko, he thought. "Well, now that I have your word that you won't tell anyone about me, I'm going to get back to training. I still have a bit to go with my speed before I'm satisfied." Naruto turned towards the clearing, reactivating his seals as he did so. When he had said that though, Anko blanched a bit. Just how much faster could he possibly fucking be? Or even want to be? I didn't even see him move. Though I wasn't really expecting it, so I think I'll just chalk it up to luck. My guard won't be down the next time. Anko thought to herself as she watched the blonde walk towards the middle of the clearing. "I'll catch you later, Gaki. There's a stick of dango calling out to me." And with that, she left the blonde alone in the clearing. On her way to the dango shop, she couldn't help but think about her encounter with the blonde. He was definitely strong. Far stronger than anyone his age rightly should be. She'd have to come back and see what he'd be up to in a few days. She had to go on another mission soon anyway. Back in the clearing, Naruto was also thinking back on his strange encounter. Well, at least I controlled my hormones this time. It'd be embarrassing as hell if I acted the way I did the first time I saw her. Anyways, I think that went rather well all things considered. Plus, I think I just found a sparring partner and possible friend. She's gonna be interesting to be around, that's for sure. Well anyway, time to get back to it. Got a long way to go. Who are you talking to? A clone asked him. Caught off guard, Naruto face faltered but quickly recovered. Oh shut the hell up. And the seemingly self-made clone was popped out of existence with a swift strike to the chin. Naruto then returned to his regular training, well, regular for him. A week later, Naruto was once again in his training ground. He was about to head home for the day when his clones alerted him of someone coming. They landed in front of him with a grin. Hey Enko. What brings you by? Naruto asked with a smile. I like you Gaki. You don't bother with honorifics. I've always hated formalities. As to why I'm here, I just got back from my mission not too long ago. At this her face darkened a bit and Naruto caught it but he pretended not to notice. Anyway kid, thought I'd get a rematch, seeing as how you surprised me last time. I'll make sure to kick your ass this time. The purpled-haired girl said, the grin and color returning to her face. Naruto could tell that whatever her mission was, it was bothering her. She probably came to vent a bit, which he was very much willing to do. He could understand needing to fight out your frustrations. Yeah. I was about to head home actually so you came at a good time. Seeing that it's getting to be around the time I eat something, you want to join me when we're done. Whoa kid. You're 10 years too young to be asking me out. Anko said playfully. This made Naruto blush significantly. And no it's not like that I swear. I just thought it would be nice to eat in company. Naruto exclaimed waving his hands in front of his face. Anko noticed his blush and decided to act on it. Messing with people had always been her favorite thing to do. What you don't think I'm pretty enough or something? She said with a pouty face. And no. It's not like that at all. I think you're beautiful. I don't know. I just thought I'd ask. Naruto said with increasing distress, putting his arms in front of his face as if to protect himself from an incoming punch. Enko was caught off guard by what he had said. No one had called her that before. It was always snake whore, slut or worse. She had never been given a compliment by a male since she got back from Orochimaru's hideout. Luckily Naruto didn't see the shock on her face with his arms in front of his. She got over her shock just in time as she schooled her features into a playful smirk. Don't worry about it kid. I'm just fucking with ya. She said as Naruto peeked over his arms. Oh, well, is that a yes or a no, then? He said a little sheepishly, looking at the ground. Sure Gaki. Now back to the matter at hand. I was about to kick your ass, Anko said with her smirk still intact. Naruto put on a serious expression then smirked, forgetting about his previous embarrassment. If you think you can Anko. He toned down his resistance seals to 4. That should put me around the same speed as her, probably he thought. He got down into his fighting stance and raised his hand to gesture her over to him. I'll let you make the first move this time, he said with a glint in his eye. Oh you're gonna regret that Gaki, she said with an equal glint and murderous smirk. They stood there for a moment, waiting for either to make a twitch when she suddenly shot forward to engage into jutsu. Naruto saw her strike and was about to counter it but was surprised when she suddenly shot back. Senijashu, hidden shadow snakes. As she said this, a stream of 5 snakes shot out from the sleeve of her tan trench coat to ensnare their prey. Naruto had forgotten that she knew snake jutsu like the snake Sannin. Because of this, he was caught off guard and one of the snakes nicked his arm. As soon as it did he realized that the snake had injected a poison into him. Luckily, his tenant would take care of that. Yo Kurama. Can you flush out my system with your chakra? He shouted into his mind. Yeah kid way ahead of ya. I ain't about to die by some measly poison because you can't seem to avoid a slow strike by a slower opponent. The fox grumbled right back at her jailer. In his momentary lapse in his mind, he failed to notice Anko shoot towards him taking advantage of the opportunity she left him. She had a kunai in hand this time, ready to slice his jugular. Just in time, Naruto caught her hand and deflected the attack and punched her in the gut, sending saliva out of her mouth and sending her flying through the air. She landed in a 3-point stance, skidding on the ground about 20 feet away. Holy shit this kid can punch hard. Anko yelled out in her mind. She couldn't believe that something so small could hit so hard. She knew he was fast, but to be this strong too. It was just ridiculous. Damn Gaki. You got some impressive strength there. But let's see if you can handle this. She said hunched over, never losing her smirk. Naruto smirked right back and shot forward. He threw a series of punches and kicks, each being blocked or deflected expertly by Anko. You're pretty fast Anko, but let's step it up a notch. Naruto began to realize that he was only slightly faster than Anko, but he still hadn't seen her full speed yet. At his comment, he shot back, making a seal-less cage Bunshin appear behind her. Since he was unsure of her speed, he'd need a backup plan. She shot forward to chase after him, attempting to punch him in the temple, but missed purposefully, throwing her weight into a heavy axe kick to his shoulder. She wouldn't do this against a regular opponent, but Naruto was short enough for it to work. What she hadn't counted on was her leg being caught from behind right before it started to make its descent. The clone? When the fuck did he make that? Don't tell me he can do it without seals. Who is this kid? She furiously thought to herself, only to be interrupted by a side kick to her upper back, once again sending her flying off. She manipulated her body to land in a three-point stance once again, but with a little less grace. When she stopped skidding, she barely had time to dodge 6 shuriken hurling towards her head. With the ample distraction, Naruto managed 2 in her blind spot. He threw a sweeping kick to knock her down, but to his surprise, she jumped up to evade it. Realizing his blunder, Naruto tried to jump back, only for the bottom of his chin to be smashed by a steel-toed combat boot. As Anko was about to celebrate her win, Naruto puffed and smoked. Immediately becoming alert, Anko spun around to look for the blonde, only for the wind to be knocked out of her by a swift blow to the stomach. Naruto then side-kicked her on the collarbone, knocking her to the ground. Naruto then pounced on her, kunai at her throat. Before she realized what happened, she felt cold steel against her throat and a weight on top of her. She looked up to a smirking Naruto. "Looks like it's my win again, Anko-chan." At this, she sent a snake from her sleeve to tear out Naruto's windpipe, only for it to burst into smoke, again. Fucking damn it. The same thing as last time. Try something new for once, why don't ya? She yelled out in exasperation and frustration at her loss. "Hey, why change something that works?" Naruto said with a shrug as he walked up to the girl. "Why the hell didn't the poison work? You should be on the ground paralyzed by now, foaming at the mouth." She asked a little irritated as she began to get up. "Well, let's just say that poison doesn't really work on me unless it's extremely, extremely potent," Naruto said to the annoyed Anko, who just grumbled at his response, not entirely satisfied by his answer. "Fine, what do you want this time, Gaki?" she said with her arms crossed with her face in a pout. "Eh? Oh, don't worry about it. Company for dinner is just fine," he said nonchalantly. Anko just stared at him with slightly narrowed eyes. He didn't want anything from her. No ulterior motives. Just her company. No one had wanted just her company before. This kid was getting weirder and more interesting every time he spoke to her. She lightened her expression a little. "Fine, Gaki. Where we going?" It was more of a demand to know than a question. "The place where they serve the food of the gods," he exclaimed with a finger pointing towards the sky. Anko's eyes lit up. "The dango shop?" Anko asked excitedly. Naruto just looked at her with narrowed eyes. "No, I was talking about Ichiraku. They serve the best ramen and ramen is the food of the gods." They stared at each other for a minute before a spark seems to manifest between their foreheads. "The fuck you saying, Gaki? Dango is the food of the gods," she said with a dangerous glare. "No, ramen is," Naruto said with an equally dangerous glare. They stood there for a few minutes, waiting for one to admit their defeat at the proclamations. "Fine. How about we agree to disagree?" Naruto asked, never losing the look in his eyes. "Why do I have to agree to anything? I'm the one stating the facts here," Anko said irritably. No one had called her out on her food obsession. To have a kid around 10 to do it was a new one and she didn't really expect it. After a few more moments of the stare down, she turned her head with a huff. "Whatever. Let's just go to this itchy whatever place. It'd better be good too." "Ichiraku? It's my favorite place to eat anyway. And the owners are really nice people," Naruto explained, losing all venom to his face and tone of voice. "Alright, lead the way, Gaki," she said, gesturing her hand, replacing her glare with a half smile. "Sure thing," Naruto said, smiling. But before they left, a thought came to Anko. "Nice fight, I bet you enjoyed straddling me there at the end too, didn't you?" Anko said with an evil smirk. Naruto instantly turned towards her red-faced. "Oh, stop it. It wasn't like that," he exclaimed, turning back around with a huff. Anko just laughed at the blonde's expense. At that they bolted off, traveling through the treetops, Naruto leading the way. "So Gaki, why do you train so hard anyway? I'm sure there's funner things to do than train all day, in the forest of death no less," Anko asked curiously. "Well, I want to protect my precious people, as well as the village. I'd say the civilians don't really deserve it, but I want to protect all the shinobi and kinwaichi of the world. To do that, I have to be stronger than everyone else. And to do that, I have to train," he said with a smile. "I had my childhood already. To protect everyone else's, I easily give up my second one," Naruto thought. "Huh. You're kinda strange, Gaki. But I have to agree with you with the civilian part," she said with her face darkening. "All they're good for is screaming and yelling about things they don't understand. Especially the council. They're fucking worthless." Naruto just glanced at her with a sorrowful expression. "I'm sorry that you have to know that life, Anko," he said remorsefully. "What the fuck do you know? You know nothing about the hardships of life. What could you know? You're only 10. At this point they were both facing each other, having stopped on the tree branches. Naruto just smiled with a sadness in his eyes that Anko had never seen before. "I know more than you might think. So goes the life of a demon child," Naruto said, thinking back on all the terrible things people had done to him in his previous life. When he said this, it suddenly jogged Anko's memory of who this kid was. He was the host of the Kyuubi. She had forgotten, being young when the attack actually happened. She had heard rumors and just now she realized who those rumors were talking about. The look in his eyes told her more than she needed to know anyway. "Oh. Well, whatever. We've both had hard lives, I suppose. Let's just go," Anko said with a forced smile. "You know, Anko, we might not know each other very well or for very long, but you can talk to me if you want to. You'd be amazed at how talking about problems with someone who understands really feels," Naruto said with a sad smile. "Whatever, Gaki. I don't need you to." She was cut off when she suddenly knelt down, clutching her shoulder in immense pain. "Not now. Why do I have to have an episode in front of this, Gaki?" she thought. She bit her lip from the pain, causing it to bleed, before she yelled out in pain. "Fuck." She screamed out, with Naruto at her side with a hand on her back in almost an instant. "Anko, are you okay?" But she didn't hear him, the pain blocking out all of her senses. Seeing her clutch her shoulder, Naruto suddenly remembered that she had Orochimaru's curse mark, just like Sasuke would eventually have. Forcefully moving her hand to the side, he looked at the pulsing dark circle that was her object of pain. It had expanded to a larger circle with some kanji extending from it. "It seems that this curse mark is a less complete one from what I remember from Sasuke's," he thought to himself. Anko wrung free her hand from Naruto's grasp to clutch her shoulder again. Naruto picked her up bridal style to carry her to his apartment. He would have brought her to her own apartment, but he didn't know where it was, so his apartment would do. As he carried her, she seemed to lose her sense of time and where she was, lost in the pain she was going through. He arrived at his apartment, only to see that his door had been kicked in and the lock broken. "Shit, I don't have time for this right now, but seals are definitely going up after this is over. Break into my apartment, will you?" he thought as he walked through the door. What he saw, he didn't appreciate. He saw two figures about to smash one of his tables in. Civilians. "Oh look. It's the demon and his bitch. What, you bring her here to spread your demonic seed? Do us a favor and don't. One of you is enough." The man spat at Naruto, spitting as he did so. Naruto just walked right past him to the bedroom. Good they haven't gotten this far yet. "Anko, you lie here a minute. I'll deal with my guests," he said with a cold voice, loud enough for the intruders to hear, sending shivers down their spines. He put Anko on the bed just to see her curl up in a ball from the pain. Naruto winced at her, then walked back out to face the two men. "I don't believe I invited you in. If you would, leave before I have to do something drastic," Naruto said in the same cold tone. The man to his left seemed to get it and was unsure of what to do, but the man on his right just got angry. "What can a piece of shit like you do? Just for the amount of disrespect you've shown us by ignoring us and just by existing, I think we ought to beat the shit out of you and teach you a lesson," the man snarled, hitting his fist against his hand as he did so. This brought a little vigor to his companion as he gained more confidence from the man's threat. Naruto had closed his eyes during the man's threats, but after he was done Naruto opened them, showing red eyes and a cold glare, contrasting the color to form a terrifying visage. He then demonically growled out, "I warned you." The Goro Tetsu was having a really bad day. First he gets fired from his job as an assistant to a popular merchant, then he gets mugged on the way back home on his walk of shame. He had been by the demon's apartment while on his way home and it only enraged him further. The Kyuubi had killed both his parents when he was 18 and that the demon who did it got to live on was only insult to injury. He thought that he'd go vent his frustrations on the blonde later that night with his friend that also hated the demon for taking his little sister. When they got to the apartment later that night, they had counted on the boy being there so they could show him living was worse than dying, but he wasn't, so they compromised and agreed to trash his place. What they hadn't counted on was said boy interrupting them, carrying a busty female in his arms that he no doubt had seduced with his demon charms. Currently, they were standing opposite of the boy in question when he just gave them a bone-chilling threat. He had already felt a little put off by the boy's attitude, but it was nothing compared to the sudden burst of killing intent that they were feeling. It overwhelmed him, almost crushing his very soul out of his body. He wanted to scream out in fear, but could only kneel with eyes wide, absolutely petrified. It had been just like that day 11 years ago, the same feeling of dread. The boy had blood-red eyes and a dangerous feral frown on his face. "I will only ask you this once. Leave and never come back." It was demanded, not asked by the enraged boy, seemingly turned demon. Kaguro just nodded dumbly, struck in fear from the boy in front of him. With a motion of Naruto's hand, he scrambled to his feet to flee so he could keep his life intact, his partner in crime following hot on his heels. As if it were a switch, the killing intent vanished, as did Naruto's anger. Now that that's taken care of, Naruto said with only a small bit of irritation, turning back to the bedroom. You know, I always relish in the fear that radiates off people when you do that, Kid Kurama said in her container's head with amusement. Oh, I bet you do, Naruto said with a chuckle. Walking towards the bed where Anko was writhing, Naruto's face darkened. He moved to sit beside her, unclenching one of her hands to hold it. She took it and squeezed as the pain tore through her body. Naruto had to wince at the strength she was applying, more so out of sympathy than pain. He stayed like that with her for a few hours, until the pain finally passed and she was fast asleep, exhausted from the event. At this point, Naruto was once again looking over the seal to get a better look. He frowned at it, not being able to see the whole array, but being able to tell that the seal itself consisted of 3 distinct parts. What those parts were, he had no idea. He assumed at least one part had to be what distributed the chakra that caused the pain. This will be a tough one to figure out, Dadabeo, Naruto mused to himself. He was caught off guard when Anko suddenly wrapped her arms around him as she laid in her unconscious form. Not knowing what to do, Naruto just sat there next to her, frozen in place with his arms up, not daring to touch her. Eventually, he sighed, seeing as to how she wasn't going to be letting go anytime soon. He lied down on his bed to let her continue to snuggle up against him. All the while his face was bright red from, to his mind, the compromising position he was in with the older Jonin. It was the least he could do to provide comfort for what she had just gone through though. They laid like that for the rest of the night, Naruto getting barely 2 hours of sleep and once his body made the decision to sleep for him. He awoke with Anko's arms still wrapped around him with her soft mounds pressing into his side. She hadn't been like that when he went to sleep. Realizing the situation, Naruto's face went bright red, with a small trickle of blood going down his nose. He wasn't mentally prepared for this to happen. He tried to wriggle out of her grasp when she began to stir, letting go and rolling over to face the other way. Naruto let out a sigh of relief. Thank Kami she didn't wake up while she was doing that. I don't want to know what she would do to me if she found out she was cuddling with a gaki like me, Naruto thought to himself and shuddered as he got out of his bed. He probably wouldn't admit it to himself, but he secretly enjoyed laying next to the beautiful woman all night, especially the position he was in when he woke up. He walked over to the kitchen to start making some breakfast for himself and his unexpected bed companion. Anko stirred once again, the smell of food resting on her nose. She sat up bleary-eyed before she started to panic when she noticed she was in an unfamiliar room. Where am I? How'd I get here? She asked herself, her mind racing. She jumped out of the bed silently to make her way over to where the smell was coming from. She peeked her head around the doorframe of the kitchen to see the blonde she had sparred with yesterday making food, breakfast it seemed. Still slightly alarmed but not as threatened, she stepped over into the doorway to face the would-be chef. Naruto noticed her in the corner of his eye and turned to face her. She had her hands on her hips with an expectant stare. Oh, morning Anko, he said with a smile. Why am I here? She demanded. Keeping up his smile, Naruto started to explain. Well, we were on our way to get something to eat if you remember, then you suddenly collapsed on one of the tree branches. You look to be in a lot of pain so I brought you here. At that, Anko suddenly remembered that they were going to that itchy place when an episode came over her. And where exactly is that? She demanded, never losing the sharpness in her tone. My apartment, where else? Naruto said with a sheepish smile. He turned back to the food he was making for the two of them. I didn't ask you to help me, Gaki. Why the fuck did you help me? Anko asked with the same sharpness with a hint of desperation in her voice. She didn't understand how someone she just met would just help her, let alone a brat like this if the rumors about him were to be believed. Right before her episode began, she had remembered that the blonde was the local pariah. Well, I mean why wouldn't I? I can't just leave a beautiful girl such as yourself to suffer in pain alone, can I? Naruto said sheepishly, rubbing the back of his head, glancing at the purple-haired woman. She just narrowed her eyes at the boy. She didn't remember what happened after she stopped at the branch last night, much like her previous episodes. She hadn't had one in a few months and was surprised it came as soon as it did. Typically they would come every 6 months or so. Sparring with the kid must have triggered it somehow. Anyway, I'm making us some breakfast if you want to go sit at the table. Anko just nodded hesitantly before she made her way to a chair at the square table in the other room. It was one of the few tables that weren't destroyed in the whole place, and she couldn't help but wonder why most of the kids' furniture was in such shambles. She didn't have to wait much longer as Naruto brought her a plate of eggs, bacon, and diced potatoes and set it in front of her, as well as a glass of milk, doing the same for himself, sitting across from her. I did Akamasu, Anko mumbled irritably, eyeing the food in front of her, making sure the blonde ate first to make sure it wasn't poisoned before she started eating as well. They sat in somewhat uncomfortable silence as they ate their food. After some time Anko broke the silence with a question. Say kid, why does your place look like shit? Oh, well, when I got back here with you, some unsavory guests were here. They seemed to think that my stuff needed to be broken, but I sent them on their way before they could destroy anything else, Naruto said with a half-chuckle that had little humor in it. Anko was slightly surprised at the explanation. So what, did you beat the shit out of him or something? That's what I would have done, or have done, in the past, she said with a chuckle just as humorless as Naruto's had been. No, but I did manage to scare them a bit. I don't think they'll be bothering me again anytime soon, he said thinking back how the faces of the two men had looked. Anko just laughed a bit. What about you is scary? I've seen scarier shit from pre-academy squirts. She jibed at Naruto. Oh ha ha, Naruto laughed sarcastically, let's see if you say that when I go Kyuubi on your ass, he mumbled under his breath with a huff. Sorry Gaki, I didn't quite catch that, Anko said still chuckling at Naruto's display. After she was done laughing at the boy's expense, her mind was plagued with a question. Hey, why did you bring me to your place instead of the hospital or something? That's what a normal person would do under those circumstances. Well it's because I know that they wouldn't have been any help. All they could have done is sedate you, but with the tainted chakra in your system, I doubt it would have worked, Naruto informed, making Anko perk up in alarm. What do you know about the mark? She asked in a dangerous tone with narrowed eyes. Well, if you keep it between me and you, I know it's a curse mark from Orochimaru. The bastard snake came up with it to control people and in return give them power, Naruto said with a little disgust. Anko just ignored his tone. How the hell do you know about it? You're just a fucking kid. She yelled at the kid, standing up from the table as she did so. Naruto just sighed at her angered response. You'd be surprised at how much I know. I actually have an offer for you if you're willing to listen, Naruto said looking up at the alarmed woman. What do you have that I could possibly want? She asked with a scowl, upset she didn't get an answer to her question. Well I've been taking to Fuinjutsu lately and was wondering if you'd let me try to find a way to remove the curse mark, Naruto said, shocking Anko out of her previous mood. It soon returned though. How the hell can a gaki like you do that if Jiraiya of the Sannin couldn't even do it? She yelled at the blonde. Hey now I didn't say I could do it, I said I'd like to try if you let me, he clarified with a smile. Anko still wasn't sure about it. If a supposed seal master couldn't figure it out then how could a kid do it? But she did hate the fucking thing. She supposed it wouldn't hurt to let him try. Any chance she could to get rid of the painful reminder of her past, she'd take it. She wouldn't get her hopes up though. Alright fine. You can try. But I doubt you'll be able to do it, she said irritably, turning her head with a huff. She sat back down to finish her food. We won't know until I try will we? Naruto said with an infectious grin that seemed to put Anko at ease. They finished their food in relatively comfortable silence until both had finished. Thanks kid. That was pretty damn good, Anko said, her regular attitude showing itself once more. No problem. With that, Naruto stood up and took the plates and glasses and went off to the kitchen. He set the dishes in the sink and walked back out to his guest. Well this has been fun and all Gaki, but I gotta get going. No doubt my roommate is freaking out that I didn't come home last night. I have to deal with a lot of shit from people, so when I don't come home she's always worried sick about me. Anko said with a sad smile. It quickly turned into a smirk as she looked up at the blonde in front of her. I'll find you in the forest when I'm not busy for you to work on the mark. Possibly a spar so I can kick your ass a bit, she said with her trademark grin. She needed to leave and think things over. She couldn't really wrap her head around this kid. First, he's crazy strong, and then he goes and says that he wants to try to remove the mark that her traitorous ex-sensei gave her that has tortured her for years. Yeah whatever, Naruto sighed with a smile on his face. He hoped that he could talk to the girl about some of her village problems. If anyone could understand the hatred that came from something you couldn't control, it was him. As Anko was walking to the door, she couldn't help but notice something. Kid, your door is kinda broken, she said, seeing the door on the floor with the hinges busted out. Naruto just sighed. So goes the life of the demon of Konoha, he mumbled to himself. 3 months later. The 4th academy year was going to start the next day. Naruto was currently lying in his bed thinking things over since he came back. Over the past few months, he spent nearly all of his time in training ground 44. Anko would come by once every 2 weeks or so to spar with him and to try to figure out her curse mark. In all of his Fuinjutsu studies, it was by far the most rudimentary and complex thing he had come across. Afterward, they would usually go get something to eat, typically to either Ichiraku or the dango shop that Anko frequented. Naruto discovered that he actually liked dango quite a bit, but ramen was still king to him. He was really enjoying spending time with the snake mistress. She was crude, disrespectful, sadistically sexual, but all in all hilarious and fun to be around. It also helped that she was extremely nice to look at, her easily being one of the most beautiful girls in the entire village. It kind of frustrated him that he couldn't get her to talk about anything personal with him. Every time he tried, she'd either change the subject or just leave altogether. She'd come around one of these days, he was sure of it. He also put some seals up to guard his apartment, so what happened the night of Anko's episode wouldn't happen again. The defense seal he came up with wouldn't allow anyone to enter through it anywhere it was active, so all of the entry points of his apartment, except for Naruto and those he invited. He also made some privacy seals so people wouldn't be able to overhear him say or do anything. All in all, he was happy with his new fortress of solitude. He needed to get a new place to live though. Living in this apartment for as long as he had was starting to get pretty old. He'd have to take it up with the old man. Speaking of, Naruto couldn't help but think he should tell the Hokage of his situation. It would definitely help if someone knew of his situation, both in practicality and for his mental health. He could also get access to more scrolls and such if he could convince the grizzled old man. Thinking about this, Naruto decided to get a second opinion. "Hey Kurama, you think I should tell the old man about me coming from the future?" Naruto could hear a yawn in his mind and could almost see the fox stretching out. "I don't know, kid. I'm not sure how he would take it. If he believed you though it would make things a lot easier. Plus you could warn him about the coming future with Orochimaru and all that," Kurama said with a disinterested tone. "Plus it would explain the power you have and will have by the time your academy year is over. As much as I would love to see the fear on people's faces when you go orange, I don't think it would go over well if no one knew about your situation," the fox informed. "Yeah, I guess you're right. I'll go tell him today then. No time like the present, right? Wait, is that weird coming from me? Me being a time traveler and all that? Kurama? Hello?" Naruto waited for a response, but just got a resounding snore in his mind, signifying his tenant didn't care. "Oh fine, be that way." Kurama just smirked and went back to sleep. Naruto got dressed and ready for the day by going through his morning routine and eating breakfast. He looked in the mirror and frowned somewhat at what he saw. "You know, I should probably get out of this kill me orange jumpsuit. As soon as I'm genin, I'm going shopping for some more shinobi-esque clothing," Naruto said with a determined look. He left his apartment and started off to the Hokage Tower. Upon arriving, Naruto got several dirty looks from the shinobi that were standing guard. Naruto just ignored them and went up to the secretary. "Hey, I need to see the Hokage about something involving village security," Naruto said, hoping the girl would let him in without fuss. Luckily, she didn't look up from what she was doing and waved him in. As Naruto was walking through the door, she looked up to see the demon had just gotten past her. She scowled and tried to stop the boy, but was too late as Naruto closed the door in front of her. She reluctantly went back to her desk, muttering something about demon children and their evil ways. Naruto walked into the Hokage's office only to see the old man looking down at a pile of paperwork with a scowl on his face. "Hey Jiji, how goes the paperwork?" Naruto said with a smile. Hiruzen looked up from his work to greet his favorite blonde with a smile. "Oh, it goes, I suppose. For what do I owe the pleasure, Naruto?" the Hokage asked, pushing aside what he had been working on. "Well, actually Jiji, I need to talk you about a few S-class village secrets that I know about." Hiruzen's face suddenly turned serious as he looked at the boy. Did he know about the fox? Or his parents? How could have he found out? "Naruto, this isn't something to be talking about lightly. If you're lying or pulling a prank I will have to punish you," the old man said in his stern Hokage voice. I know. But I'm telling the truth and I would prefer if you sent your Anbu out as well as activated your privacy seals. I can't risk having anything I say leak out to anyone that isn't us," Naruto said in a voice far more mature than Sarutobi had ever heard from the boy. Hiruzen hesitated for a moment but nodded his head and lifted his hand up to signal for his Anbu to leave. He was also surprised that Naruto had known about his Anbu. When Naruto mentioned them, he looked directly at all three of them like they were out in the open clear as day. Upon leaving, he could have sworn he heard a scoff from one of the Anbu, but he couldn't be sure. Afterward, he activated the privacy seals in his office to keep prying ears from hearing anything. "Naruto, this had better be good." "Alright, well I'll get straight to the point then. 5 years from now, a group calling themselves Akatsuki will resurrect Madara Uchiha and he then becomes the Jinchuriki for the 10 tails, the culmination of all the tailed beasts. From this, a thing called Zetsu revives Kagaya Otsutsuki, the mother of all chakra and shinobi. Me and Sasuke tried to fight her, but she beat us with ease, killing us both, bringing about the end of the world. While I was dead though, the Shinigami for some reason or another was interested in me and sent my mind back in time to when I was first going into the academy. Since then, I've been training night and day, fooling everyone with the help of Kage Bunshin into thinking that I'm just the dead last in the academy." Naruto took a deep breath after his explanation. After the first sentence, Hiruzen's eyes had been wide in shock and continued to grow in it as the boy went on. After his rather quick explanation, he settled down after a moment and narrowed his gaze at the boy in front of him. That's quite the tale, Naruto. You know how crazy that sounds, right? From Madara to the 10 tails to the Shinigami, Sarutobi said in a disbelieving tone. Well, I didn't think you'd believe me. Guess I'll just have to prove it then. I suppose information will do as a first step. If I wasn't from the future, how would I know about the Kyuubi sealed inside of me? How would I know that my parents were Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki? How would I know that the Uchiha massacre was orchestrated by you and a few others to kill all members in order to prevent a coup attempt, with Itachi taking the blame? If Hiruzen was surprised before, then nothing compared to how he felt now. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. How did this boy know all of these things? He didn't even seem fazed by any of it. After staring at the boy for a few moments, the old man just sighed. If you know those things, then that doesn't leave much room for me to not believe you. Also, what you have said is very disconcerting if it is indeed true. Alright, Naruto, I believe you. Naruto just sighed in relief, thankful that the Hokage believed him. A weight seemed to lift off his shoulders as well. Thanks, Hokage Jiji, that makes things easier. I wouldn't know what to do if you didn't believe me. Well, I suppose I could have shown you my abilities. Naruto said with a finger to his chin. Speaking of, just how strong are you, Naruto? Hiruzen asked, genuinely curious. Well, if I had to guess, I'd say around high Jonin level. But by next year I doubt anyone short of the Cage, Elite Jonin, or Madara will be as strong as me, Naruto informed matter-of-factly. Hiruzen was taken aback by this. Are you serious? You're saying that you'll be one of the strongest shinobi in the elemental nations? At such a young age, I find that hard to believe, Naruto, he said with doubt in his voice. Well, I mean, I could always show you. Right now I think the only one in the village that could match my speed is Kakashi and maybe a few others, Naruto said thoughtfully. Alright, Naruto, we'll have to test you on that. You can graduate early and be promoted early if your abilities prove to be true. No, that's okay, Jiji. I want to stay at the academy and make friends. I also want to be on Kakashi's team with Sasuke and Sakura. That's how it was before. Sasuke eventually left the village to train under Orochimaru to gain the power to defeat his brother. I've been working on being friends with him so he doesn't do that, but I still don't know if he'll go or not. Speaking of, 5 months after I become a genin, at the Chunin exams, Orochimaru will attack the village with Tsunagakure. He leads the village hidden in the sound, the new one that popped up recently, Naruto once again informed. Hiruzen just had a grave expression. That's troubling news indeed. We'll talk more about it when the time comes though, the old man said with a half-hearted smile. This is quite a bit to take in at once. You're dismissed for the day while I'll think things over and what I should do. Come back tomorrow after the academy. I'm sure I'll have some more questions by then. Hopefully, this timeline doesn't end like yours did, Hiruzen said with a chuckle. Naruto just smiled at the grizzled old man. Hopefully not. Anyway, I'll see you later, Jiji. I'm going to go train for the day, Naruto said as he was about to leave, only to be stopped by the Hokage's voice. Speaking of, where do you train, Naruto? I haven't heard any reports of you training outside of what an academy student should, Hiruzen asked in confusion. Oh, I train in the Forest of Death. No one goes there except Anko, but she's pretty cool. At that, Hiruzen's face paled as Naruto walked out of the room. His face became serious again, however, when Naruto peeked around the door. It's really nice to be able to talk you again, Jiji, Naruto said solemnly. And with that, the blonde took his leave. Slightly confused at his departing words, Hiruzen regained his composure after a few moments and deactivated his privacy seals, signaling for his Anbu to re-enter the room. This is going to be an interesting few years, to say the least, the Hokage mumbled to himself, returning to his paperwork, never really paying attention to what he was reading. His Anbu just glanced at each other, confused by the whole situation. The next morning, Naruto got up early as usual to do his morning workout. Typically it would extend into the afternoon, but today was the first day of the 4th year of the academy and he had to uphold tradition. With his resistance seals at level 8 still, he ran laps around training ground 44 for about an hour. Afterward, he did 100 push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups and squats, that taking him about another hour. After looking at the sun and determining it was about a quarter to late, he turned his resistance seals back down to 6. At 6, it was much more manageable to go about day-to-day activities. 6 is where he'd tone it down to whenever he wasn't training. Only the strongest shinobi in the village could actually move well enough to fight at that level. Using chakra-enhanced movements had become second nature at this point, improving his chakra control considerably. This also helped increase his chakra reserves gradually. To deplete his chakra reserves, he'd have to have the seals active for 3 weeks straight. He turns them off whenever he sleeps, so he doesn't have to worry about that though. Deciding that it was time to head to the academy, Naruto pulled out a seal. It was one he had been working on for a while and just finished it the week prior. He put it on his exposed chest and activated it with his chakra. The seal then spread across his body, removing all the dirt, sweat, and grime he had accumulated during his workout while leaving a pleasant scent when it was finished. The whole process takes around 3 minutes, but it saves time when you can't take a shower. Naruto still preferred actual showers over the seal, but he was kind of in a hurry because the academy started at 8. After he got that out of the way, he unsealed a fresh pair of clothes to change into. Man, this orange monstrosity gets worse every passing day. I can't wait till I graduate and get cooler clothes, Naruto muttered to himself as he got dressed. When he was done, he started off towards the academy when a smile came over his face after he remembered something. Iruka-sensei. It'll be good to see you again, he thought. It took him about 10 minutes to get to the academy building and one more to find his classroom. When he walked in he was greeted with a small glare and then a forced smile from a man with a horizontal scar across his face. He'll get over his hatred for me by the end of the year. Just you wait, Iruka-sensei. Naruto thought. Naruto just smiled back, happy to see his old new sensei again. Through. Good morning, sensei, Naruto said with a smile. Iruka turned from his desk to face the blonde. Good morning, Naruto. Just so you know, you won't be getting away with any more pranks this year. I was nice before, but I'm bringing the hammer down this year. As you would say, believe it, Iruka said with a half smirk. Naruto just smiled back just as menacingly. Oh, we'll see about that, Iruka-sensei. Well, Naruto wouldn't, but his clones would. Losing his smile, Iruka went back to preparing the first day activities he had in store. As Naruto made his way to a seat next to a certain lavender-eyed girl, Iruka shot a cold look at the blonde that had begun to walk away. Something isn't right with that kid, besides the obvious thing that he's known for. He seems off from his usual self. Something about his behavior and speech just now. It's different. I'll have to keep an eye on him, Iruka thought to himself. After Naruto sat down, Iruka looked down to go over this year's lesson plan. Hey Hinata, how are you? Naruto asked the red-faced girl. She was so caught off guard that he sat next to her that she didn't even hear his question. Realizing that he was talking to her, she just looked down in front of her, poking her index fingers together. Hello NN Naruto-kun, I'm sorry, but I didn't hear you, the girl said, oozing with nervousness. She hoped the blonde wouldn't get angry because he had to repeat himself. I asked how you were, Naruto said with a smile. He had worked on schooling his expression, so he didn't look like a blushing idiot in front of the girl. Oh no, I'm good Naruto-kun, Hinata said softly. In reality though, she was both horrible and fantastic at the same time. She was horrible because she felt like she was going to faint in front of the boy she admired, but fantastic that she was sitting next to and talking to said boy. That's good. So are you excited for your final year at the academy? Naruto asked. No, I guess, Hinata said, still poking her fingers together. Tommy knows I am. More like excited when it'll be over. Then I can finally become an actual ninja, the first step in becoming the Hokage. Naruto exclaimed, making a few heads turn towards him with glares. That's great Naruto-kun. I hope you can achieve your dream. Thanks Hinata, that means a lot. Naruto said with a grin. Hinata's face just went redder. He's thanking me now. I almost can't handle this. She thought frantically. She was brought out of her tumultuous thoughts by a boy walking up to both of them. He had a fur coat on with a little white dog on top of his head. That's rich Naruto. You? Becoming Hokage? Yeah right. You have to be the strongest shinobi in the village and people have to like you. You don't have either of those as far as I can see. You'd have a better chance sneaking into one of our kennels without being caught by the guard dogs who are always on patrol. Kiba said with a smirk. Plus you'd have to be able to beat me, and from the spars in class so far, we both know that's not going to happen. Well, the good news is I'm going to prove it to you when I do take the hat from Hokage Jiji and beat you into the ground. Just you wait. Naruto said triumphantly as if he already knew. Kiba just laughed. Yeah right, I'll believe it when I see it, Kiba said walking away from the two. Naruto just sighed as Kiba sat at his desk. I believe in you, and Naruto-kun. Hinata said with her eyes closed, straining to say the words. Naruto turned to her with a surprised look and just smiled. Wow. Thank you Hinata. That means more to me than you know. It was Hinata's turn to look up at Naruto with a surprised look. After a few moments, she suddenly got dizzy and her head began to make its descent toward the desk. Naruto reacted quickly and caught her head, laying it down gently so it didn't smack against the hard surface. Naruto smiled with a hint of red to his cheeks as he looked at the passed-out form of the girl. Hinata, if only you knew. Alright class, quiet down, let's begin. As most of you are aware, I'm Iruka, your sensei for the year. As you know, Iruka began a speech about how he'd try to fulfill his teaching duty as Naruto just put his head down and stopped paying attention to his sensei. Man, I hope this year goes by fast. I can't wait to be a part of Team 7 again, Naruto thought to himself. I think those were some of the best days of my life. When class was over, Naruto went to leave, only to be caught by Sasuke when he tried to stand up. In his days of sleep, he hadn't realized that he sat next to him. "Oh hey Sasuke, I didn't know you were sitting there," Naruto said, scratching the back of his head. Sasuke gave him a deadpan expression. "I've been here the whole time, dope. Anyway, you down for some training?" Sasuke asked with a half smirk. By training, he meant sparring. They were due for one to fill their monthly quota and he wanted to test his new skills against the blonde. Maybe he'd be able to actually land a hit this time. It irked him to no end that he was never able to touch Naruto, always staying just outside of his reach. To have someone his age to so far outclass him had been a reality check. Even when he unlocked his Sharingan in a near-death experience from the blonde, he still wasn't able to touch him. It had been infuriating the way he did it too. Flashback. 1 month ago. "Alright dope. Today's the day I actually land a hit on you," Sasuke said with a smirk. "Oh, we'll just see about that. I'm going to be a bit more serious than our previous spars, just to warn you," the blonde said. Naruto had been thinking back when they were on the bridge in the Land of Waves and Sasuke activated his Sharingan in a near-death situation. He wanted to see if he could replicate that by making a situation like that on his own. He was sure Sasuke was going to be angry at him for what he was planning, but he'd understand afterward. Wouldn't he? "Bring it on," Sasuke said confidently. "You asked for it." As they both got into their fighting stances, Naruto was the first to launch himself at the raven-haired boy. Since this was the way they normally started their spars, Sasuke was prepared for it, ducking underneath the blonde's sidekick to get a hold of his leg. Naruto just spun out of the way of his hand, bringing down his fist, violently crashing on Sasuke's shoulder. With a grunt of pain, Sasuke jumped back to gain some distance. Curse him and his speed, Sasuke thought. He was about to launch his own attack when Naruto was suddenly impaled by 13 kunai. Knowing something was wrong, Sasuke looked around for the attacker. Since he didn't see a trace of the attacker, he went over to check and see if Naruto was alright. Naruto began gurgling as he coughed up blood, bleeding out in Sasuke's arms. "Come on dope, don't do this. You're stronger than this. You can't be taken down by some measly kunai." Sasuke yelled at the downed boy. In the first time in a long time, Sasuke felt truly scared, frantic even. He was about to lose his one and only friend that understood him. "I'm sorry Sasuke. I didn't see that one coming. Please don't forget about our friendship." Naruto's eyes grew wide as he gave one last breath, his eyes glazing over shortly after. After a moment of pure shock, Sasuke stood up in rage, determined to find his friend's killer. He began searching when his blood went cold when a presence made itself known right in front of him. Sasuke's eyes went wide with shock once more, then were filled with a deep hatred laced with anger. "Itachi!" Sasuke screamed. Why was his brother here? Why had he killed Naruto? Itachi just stood there with a stoic and calm expression that infuriated Sasuke even further. He had on a black cloak with red clouds that Sasuke had never seen before, that had a high collar that hid half of his face. "Hello, little brother. I've come back to finish what I started," Itachi said in an ice-cold tone. As if his tone affected the temperature, Sasuke went stiff from the comment. After a moment of staring at his brother, he looked down, his bangs shadowing his eyes. "I've kindled my hatred. I've made it my goal to train every day to be able to kill you. Just when I made a friend that I could rely on to help me and understand me, you take him away from me." Sasuke screamed at the Stoichiche. "I'm going to kill you right here and now. You seem to misunderstand. You are an insect that I am here to put out of its misery." With that, Itachi vanished from sight, appearing right in front of Sasuke with kunai in hand about to slash Sasuke's throat. Sasuke's eyes went wide in fear. He didn't want to die, not yet. This isn't how this was supposed to happen. With newfound anger, Sasuke's eyes flashed red, allowing him to see the attack, narrowly dodging out of the way. He jumped back to look upon his brother once again, with newfound vision. What is this? I can see his movements now. Well, whatever it is, I'll use it to destroy him. Sasuke screamed in his mind. If he could see himself, he'd see blood-red eyes with two tomo in each of them. His vision was crystal clear now. He could make out every single detail and recalled everything he saw with perfect memory. He didn't have time to think about what this new power was though, as he was too focused on the situation at hand. Itachi pulled down his collar to reveal a genuine smile. "Congratulations, Sasuke." In a puff of smoke, Itachi vanished from sight, revealing a beaming blonde with a foxy grin. "I see that my little plan worked. I told you I was going to take the spar a little more seriously," Naruto said, rubbing the bottom of his nose with his finger. Sasuke was just stunned for a moment. Naruto had died in his arms not 2 minutes ago, yet he was right here in front of him and Itachi was nowhere to be seen. It took him a minute, but Sasuke finally put the pieces together. He looked at Naruto with an angry scowl. What the fuck was that, Naruto? You know how I feel about my brother. Why would you put me through that? Sasuke yelled uncharacteristically at Naruto. I can't believe you'd make me relive the pain I went through that day. Sasuke was about to kick the blonde out forever when Naruto's sheepish grin caught his eye. Well, there was a purpose to it, you know. Here, take this and look at yourself, Naruto said sheepishly, handing Sasuke a mirror. Sasuke just glared at him for a moment. He reluctantly took the mirror to look in the mirror when the anger dropped from his features and was replaced by surprise. He looked up at the blonde with wide eyes. My eyes, he trailed off. I knew that you could only unlock them in a near-death situation, and this was the only thing I could think of that was a surefire way to do it, Naruto said, rubbing the back of his head once again. You did this to unlock my Sharingan, Sasuke said in disbelief. His scowl soon returned after the shock wore off though. I'm still pissed at you for doing that though. Playing with my emotions like that, Sasuke said in a scoff. Now listen, Sasuke. When we're shinobi, enemy shinobi won't think twice about using your weaknesses against you. That includes the hatred you harbor for your brother. I already know of one team that will try to take advantage of it. You need to learn to control it and not let it control you, Naruto lectured. Learn to hone and channel it to your advantage. Keeping a cool head in a fight can be the difference between life and death, sometimes for more people than yourself. He got another scoff from the raven-haired boy. Whatever, dope. I'm done for today. I want to get used to my new eyes anyway. Naruto just nodded at this. Alright, Sasuke. Just understand that I did that so you could gain Sharingan in a controlled setting, not when your life was truly on the line, Naruto said sincerely. As he was leaving, Sasuke called out to him. Naruto? Yeah? Just, thanks, I guess, Sasuke begrudgingly said. This caught Naruto off guard, however. Sasuke. Thanking him. Oh, this was going to take some getting used to. No problem, Sasuke. I'll always have my friends' backs, Naruto said with a grin. He turned once more to leave the compound. When he was gone, Sasuke just spent the rest of the day activating and deactivating his Sharingan over and over again. Flashback end. Sasuke was still pretty pissed at Naruto for that, but like Naruto said, he understood why he had done it. After all the training he had done with his Sharingan, he wanted to see how he stacked up to his favorite sparring partner. Actually, I can't right now, I have to go talk to the Hokage about some things. Maybe afterwards though. Can I meet you in your compound in a few hours? Sasuke got a confused look on his face before nodding. Sure, whatever, dope. Just make sure you stop by, he said with a smirk. Yeah, whatever, emo boy, Naruto said with a smirk of his own. Naruto stood up and faced the indigo-haired girl on his left. I'll see you later, Hinata-chan. Maybe we can train together sometime, Naruto said with a grin. Hinata just blushed heavily at the attention she was receiving from her favorite blonde, that and the suffix he had used with her name. Why yeah, I'd like that, Naruto-kun, the girl squeaked out. Naruto couldn't help but grin at the cuteness he was witnessing. Anyway, I'll see you later. The old man wants to see me for something. Naruto left his two friends. Bye, Naruto-kun. Hinata squeaked once again. He had to smile at her comment as he walked out the door. The girl's cuteness was getting to be too much for him. On the other hand, he couldn't wait to just shunshin out of a room whenever he wanted. The look on other people's faces would be priceless. What if Naruto awakens his potential arley help of Kurama? End here, and thanks for watching my video till the end.